So guys, what if Naruto became Wizarding Shinobi Movie 1? This is the power that drives the world that we find ourselves in now today. All people who reside in it have said energy within them, for without it would mean death to any living thing. Yet in life, there is always that one anomaly that goes against the natural order of things, and this is the story of one of them. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze was born alongside his brother Menma as the son of infamous shinobi Kushina Uzumaki, who was one of if not the last of the once great Uzumaki clan, as well as Minato Namikaze, the man who single-handedly ended a war with his most infamous of jutsu in the Third Shinobi War. The two of them were so very happy to see their sons breathe new life, which they feared for since there were complications with the carriage itself, and it was only with the aid of Tsunade Senju, one of the best medical minds around, that they both were born without complications. But soon their happiness turned to worry as Tsunade sensed something off about Naruto and took him away to run a few tests to ensure everything was alright with him. His parents held on to Menma as they waited with held breath to hear what was wrong. Soon enough Tsunade came back with a look of shock and worry on her face. She told them that Naruto was born without chakra. Not a single bit of the energy resided within him. This shocked the two of them to hear this, since the boy was alive and yet the very energy needed to live was not in him. How was this even possible? Yet even with his abnormality, they loved him all the same since he was their son, so they took him along with his brother home and began their life as a family. But the happiness did not last for long, as time went by. 5 years of it to be exact. Naruto became more of a nuisance for the family that they began to resent and loathe. When people got hurt, the chakra within them helped to heal them, yet he could not say it took longer. Menma was trained to be a great shinobi, and Naruto wanted to join in as well, yet he could not. He heard the insults sent his way by others in the village of Konoha, who all saw him as some sort of abomination and should just die since he lacked the energy that kept people alive and went against nature as he was. He was bullied by many, and yet his own parents cared less and less about him daily and told him to handle his own problems, since with his handicap they would not always be there to aid him, so he would have to fend for himself. Hell, in time his own brother began to bully him as well and look down upon him. His parents helped him dress his wounds at first, but over time they started to ignore them to the point that they just refused to help him altogether. What Naruto was unaware of was that his parents heard all the horrible things that had been said about Naruto. And while at first they were pissed to hear such things like any parent should be, they began to agree with them in time, since in their own minds Naruto was becoming more and more of a nuisance to them as well as a smirch on their clan's infamous status. How can they claim to be powerful as well as infamous if one of their few members was quite literally the weakest that one could possibly be without the means to become stronger and overcome that weakness? What made the situation even worse was that Jiraiya, known as the Toad Sage, had come to the both of them and spoke of a prophecy that involved Menma. He had heard it from the Toad Elder himself, and it went like this. A battle will be waged, one for the ages, demons sealed, locked in cages. One void of color, black as the night, the other while colorful, is not of the light. One will be trained by the best to fight off any danger. The other will not, gifted only so little by a stranger. A stranger who has more power than deemed fair, yet the fate of our world, for it he does not care. They will fight, and one shall fall. The winner will either save us, or doom us all. This bit of news became unsettling to Minato and Kushina, who came to the conclusion that Menma will be the one to save them. Yet from what was the major question, since the prophecy was odd to say the least. According to it, there was a stranger who had more power than they could honestly imagine. And the only saving grace to the whole thing was that this stranger would only gift a small bit to the one that Menma would have to face in the future. They had no idea or even the means to figure out how strong of an opponent Menma would be facing, so it was then that they prepared to fully train Menma to be the best shinobi there was, since according to the prophecy he was the catalyst of their survival. So since they put all their time and effort into training Menma, Naruto was at this point fully ignored, since by this point of time they had come to see he was worthless in their eyes. Menma was no better for Naruto than their parents. His arrogance only intensified at the age of 6. When Kushina and Minato sealed the 9-tailed Biju Kyuubi within him, making him the newest Jinchuriki of the beast, Naruto trained hard day after day in hopes of getting stronger so that his parents would notice him, but he was left alone most of the time, and the emotional strain was getting to be too much for Naruto to bear. At times it seemed like he didn't have a family, and that his parents were doing this in preparation to get rid of him in some way. That was what he feared. And on his and Menma's 7th birthday, his fears became a reality. The party was big, with all the other clan heads showing up with all their children. There were gifts galore, all for Menma of course, and plenty of food and sweets. Naruto was ignored by all of them, as was the usual, as he sat in the corner with a sad face. It was near the end of the party that Menma was named the sole heir of the Uzumaki as well as the Namikaze name, which while all those in attendance cheered, Naruto felt the pit in his stomach grow. It was then that Menma was tasked with one of the duties of his future role and walked over and grabbed Naruto by the arm. He essentially pulled him out of the house as the other kids laughed at him and threw him out onto the streets. Naruto tried to get back inside, but the seal had been changed and he was not able to open the door anymore. Naruto thought that this was a cruel joke of some kind and asked to be let in, but they didn't open the gate and went back inside to enjoy the rest of the party. Naruto cried as he waited for them to be done and let him back inside, hoping that he would be allowed back in, but when the others left to go home and he walked through the gate, Minato was the one to throw him out this time. He said not a word and simply handed Naruto a pack filled with some clothes, food and a letter before he closed the gate once more, barring Naruto from ever entering again. Naruto's tears only intensified as he fell to his knees and read the letter given to him. It went on to state that both his parents as well as Menma saw him just as everyone else did. An abomination, a stain on the legacy of two great clans. Not worth the time and effort, yet while they thought this, they would not kill him and threw him out to let nature take its course, for nature made Naruto the way he was. It could fix it as well. With the letter was the legal documentation to disown him, so now he was no longer an Uzumaki nor a Namikaze. So with a heavy heart, Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes, picked up his pack, and began his journey with no set destination in mind outside of the village. He knew that he couldn't stay anymore here since pretty much everyone saw him as a freak, so he would set out to find somewhere new where no one knew him and he could get a fresh start, but as he walked, he was unaware of the dark entity that began to awaken inside him, and would not know about such things for quite some time. Naruto may not have had chakra like most people, but in the absence of his parents due to their blatant neglect towards him, he learned to do as they said and fend for himself. He knew how to hunt as well as survive, which was perfect since those skills came into play right now. 2 months he survived like this, 2 months of waking up in the woods with the hopes that this is some sick dream of his, yet that was not the case, and every day that passed by he only got angrier that they had literally thrown him out of the house for no reason other than public opinion, but he could do nothing about it and would simply survive. That was his long-term goal since he had nothing else he could do as he was. But it was as he hunted that he found the body of a shinobi. The village insignia was not of Konoha, so he had no idea as to where they were from since he had never attended shinobi school, but on the body were some kunai and a sword. He took both since they were of more use to him than a dead man, and as he did he saw that the man had a bingo book on his person. He looked through it out of childish curiosity and saw the name of a man who was not a shinobi, but a samurai. Mifune, the leader of the village of Iron Country, a place where shinobi were not allowed. To Naruto, this sounded perfect since he could not become a shinobi with his lack of chakra, so why not become something else? He needed a purpose in life, and this one provided it to him, so he decided to head that way to become one. He was on day 3 of his journey towards Iron Country, technically the first since he was walking the wrong direction for the past 2 before a kind old man pointed him in the right direction, and found himself alone on an empty road whistling to himself. Well well, said a rough voice as a muscular man with an eye patch appeared in front of him along with at least 4 others. They all had hiat on their arms, but it was strange for Naruto to see them have the insignia of their villages crossed out. What do we have here? It would seem like we have someone walking through our territory, men, said a taller, yet slimmer man than the first. I guess he doesn't know the rules around these parts. Rules? Asked Naruto with a gulp since he saw the men were giving off the same aura that those who wished to bully and hurt him gave when he was still in the village. Yes, said the leader with the eye patch, and the rules go that you must pay a toll to walk these roads, boy, and all must pay it no matter the age, no exceptions, so hand over all the money you have as well as anything of value. I don't have money, said Naruto as he began to lose the color in his face since now he was afraid of what would happen since he couldn't pay these men. Well, that's too bad, brat, said the man as he kicked Naruto hard in the chest to the point that Naruto vomited up his dinner from last night, because now we have to kill you. You don't have to kill me, said Naruto as the tears began to flow from his eyes. He was truly afraid that he had reached the end of his story and that his life would end here and now. You're right, said the man as he and the rest of his group laughed as the boy cried. We don't have to kill you. We want to kill you, and I am going to enjoy this. You look too much like that fucking Namikaze who killed my older brother in the 3rd Shinobi War, and so I am going to think of him as I carve you into pieces. No, please don't, screamed Naruto as he tried to run, but before he could move, he was held by one of the men who ripped his pack off and held his arms behind his back. Suddenly a loud whistle was heard behind the group, to which they all turned around to see who whistled, and what they saw is a tall figure in black garb with an aura of a shinobi, yet at the same time he doesn't look like one. And just who the fuck is this guy? shouted the man who was holding Naruto as he struggled to break free. Naruto's struggles ceased though as their attention was no longer on him, but the stranger that had just suddenly appeared out of thin air. I don't know nor do I even care, said the leader as he gestured with his head for the other 3 men to deal with this newcomer. Just deal with him so we can get back to carving this little boy up. His face disgusts me immensely. My, you have a temper, said the stranger in a tone of voice that pissed off the men who were threatening Naruto's life. Then again I doubt you have any balls to take me on. Instead you pick on little kids to inflate them. I'll bet the size of them is like the pebbles we are currently standing on, he mocks as he brings up said pebble. The leader told his men to stop as he turned around fully to deal with this stranger personally. He pulled out his twin tonfa that he used in a fight and began to twirl them as he got into an offensive stance. You want to say that again? He asked in a tone of voice that basically was daring the man to do just that and give him a reason to kill him for his insolence, because I don't think I quite heard you correctly a second ago. I am sorry, but I didn't know you had hearing problems. Perhaps I need to put a giant funnel into your ears, or maybe your brain has rotted from your lack of education due to being a missing nin. It's a surprise you became a shinobi at all, let alone a chunin, he said casually. Oh, said the leader through strained teeth, his vision going full on red with murderous intent at this point. Not that they weren't already, since he was already going to murder a child on the grounds of having nothing of value along with looking like someone else, but still, you were going to pay for that insult. It was then that he charged forward to beat this fucker black and blue with his tonfa, since he was too pissed to think straight and use any of the numerous jutsu he had learned in the past. When the leader got close to him and swung one of the tonfa, the stranger dodged at the very last second, bending expertly backwards before he flipped, slamming a foot into the leader's jaw, dislodging a tooth and making him bite his cheek in the process. What's wrong? The stranger asked. I thought I was going to pay for that insult. But it looks like you paid for your own lack of education in the end, he said as he held the leader's tooth in his hand. What the fuck are you assholes waiting for? Shouted the leader in rage, get him. The rest of the group did as ordered with their own weapons held in their hands. Even the one holding Naruto let him go to strike as this stranger, since he was a bigger threat than a scared kid. And even if the kid ran, they could track him down again if the boss really wanted to. But Naruto wasn't able to move for some reason. He was freed from the mon's grasp, but his mind was not sending the proper signals to his legs to control them into moving the hell away from this fight. The men had seen that this stranger had skills, so a simple beat down was not viable and had to use the shinobi skills that they themselves had been taught. 3 of them threw shuriken at the man while the last one did the proper hand signs and blew out a compressed air ball at him. The stranger merely shakes his head at their actions and mutters one word. Idiots. At that he waited for the shuriken to get close before, faster than even they can see, he snatches the shuriken out from the air and shockingly he caught the ball of compressed air before he twirled it around and fired it back at the shinobi who spit it out, but this time, the attack had been mixed with the shuriken inside of it. The attack hit the man with full-on blunt force, knocking the wind out of him along with cracking some ribs. But that meant little since the shuriken that had been inside the ball pierced several of his vital organs and he fell onto his back and began to bleed out. The other men saw this and realized they had to step it up since they were fighting someone stronger than they expected him to be, so they worked together to make the hand signs and summoned up a massive dragon made of earth that roared towards the stranger with its jaws wide open as if to swallow him whole. He merely looked at it boredly before with swift movement he slid to the left as it slammed into the ground before with a kick he shattered the dragon like glass and punched the rubble made from it directly towards the men. The men had no idea that this was going to happen, so they were hit and crushed by the flying debris, all except the leader, who was sweating heavily over the fact that his men had just been killed so easily by this strange man, so using his brain for once, he turned around to retreat so as to live another day. However, the stranger anticipated this, and rolling his eyes as he did so, he violently slammed his foot onto the ground. This action sends an underground projectile towards him, one of which the leader isn't aware of before it erupts from behind him and pierces straight through his chest. But the one thing that sticks out from the projectile was it's a chain with a spear-like tip, which would make him realize one thing. An Uzumaki, coughed out the leader as his life began to fade away from the spear through the chest, but he couldn't finish the sentence since he died before he could. The blood began to pour out the wound as the spear-tipped chain was removed from his body. The stranger sighs as the chain vanishes from where he summoned it from and he walks towards the shaken boy as he was frozen. Either from that fight or from the thugs who know, but he can't morally leave a kid here. Naruto was understandably afraid for his life right now and fell onto his back in fear. He had just been threatened by 4 missing nin. Not that he knew that term since he was never trained in the shinobi arts nor was he taught the terminology of it either, but to see them die like that from a man, and then have said man walk towards you only instilled fear into the heart of any sane child. Please don't hurt me, said Naruto with an apparent stuttering of his words, but fear does do such a thing to many people when they talk. I don't have any money. Easy there, kid. I am not going to hurt you, he said as he raised his hands in the universal sign of I got nothing in my hands as he stopped a few feet away from him. Then what do you want? Asked Naruto, who was still afraid. Even if the man was trying to not be threatening at the moment, his life had been threatened worse than it had ever been, so his body was still shaking in fear. Nothing. I merely came to dispatch the last of the road bandits. I don't want to take or hurt you, kid, he says as he picks up the now destroyed pack of supplies the bandits took off and frowns. Apparently it got caught in that tussle he had with them. Aw man, said Naruto as he saw his destroyed pack. He didn't have a spare on him, nor did he know where to get a new one since he had neither the knowledge of the surrounding area nor the money to get one. That was my only pack. This just isn't my day. Where are you going if you don't mind me asking? He asks, fully knowing that without supplies the kid wouldn't survive to reach wherever he was going or wants to go for that matter. I am heading to a place I read about called Iron Country, said Naruto as he began to pick up the few things that had been in his pack that were still salvageable. Luckily for him, at least one pair of spare clothes was along with his sword and kunai, which meant he could still hunt for food at least. He wrapped up the clothes and held them under his armpit for transport since he had nowhere else to put them. Iron Country. Why do you wish to go to the land of the samurai? There aren't any shinobi villages there as that's neutral territory, he asks. It's strange seeing a kid like him want to go to a different country. That's why I want to go there, said Naruto with a sigh. I am not a shinobi, nor will I ever be one in my life, so I want to become a samurai so that at least I have something to call myself. You want to share a camp with me? It sounds like you got a hell of a story to tell, he says as he looks up. It looked like it was going to become dark soon and he was unsure if there were any more bandits on this road. Sure, said Naruto simply. True, he was not as trusting of people ever since he was little due to all the sheer amount of hatred he received back in the village, but he saw that it was getting dark as well and knew he had to settle down for the night. It wouldn't have been so bad, but his sleeping bag had been destroyed, so he was kind of at a loss here. Not like I have much a choice. You don't, he says as he gestures for him to follow. He was not sure why, but that statement put him on edge quite a bit. While his first instinct was to run like hell and get as far away from this stranger as he could, he felt as though he should trust him. He was not sure why that was, but he just knew he was not going to be hurt, killed, or even sold. They arrived at a small clearing which was big enough for a small campsite. Before I do something, I need you to not freak out, do you understand? He asked with a serious look on his face. Okay, said Naruto in a tone of voice that showed that he was scared and would probably freak out anyway. He nodded before he lifted his arm and with a flick of his wrist he conjured something that would make him question so much. He conjured up a glass ball with a blue flame inside of it emitting a light source and illuminating the clearing along with generating heat. What is that? Asked Naruto as he was afraid to come any closer than he already was. He was not sure as to what the thing could do. Sure, he had heard and seen plenty of shinobi manipulate the elements with jutsu and the likes, but the power that was emanating from the glass ball was unlike anything he had ever seen or felt in his life. This is the flame of purification, said the stranger as he gestured to the glass ball. Unlike a regular fire, these flames are said to be divine in nature, used to purify the wicked from a dead soul. They don't harm or burn anyone with a good heart, making them useful as campfires as well as a defense of sorts. It's a bit of a taxing ability, but I can conjure them up without feeling heavy drain. Go ahead, touch it. You may feel a sense of tranquility from it, he said as he gestures to him to touch the orb. Naruto was hesitant at first since this seemed odd to be told to do out of the blue like that. But after an internal struggle with himself for what seemed like hours, which was only about a minute in reality, he finally stepped forward and placed his hands on the floating glass orb. As he did, a sudden sense of tranquility washed over him, one that he could not describe with words, yet it was one that he had never felt before since his life in its entirety had been one of hatred from others as well as pain from the bullying and neglect he faced on a daily basis. As the feeling washed through his very soul, he could not stop the tears that began to flow from his eyes to feel so calm after so much. Let it all out, the stranger said as he placed a comforting hand on Naruto's shoulder. The flame of purification helps release the burdens or horrors one has had in their life, especially those with horrible childhoods such as I am guessing you had, he said. But why was I born to be like I am? Asked Naruto in no more than a whisper, more to himself than to the stranger. You must have a story to tell. Have a seat and tell me what has happened to make you break down, the stranger says as he gestures to two rocks that are next to the flame. Naruto took his hands off of the flame so as to take a seat himself, and as he calmed himself to speak the truth of his life, he took a few deep breaths and wiped the tears from his eyes. So for the next hour or two, Naruto spoke about the story that was his life. He told the stranger about the simple fact that he was born without chakra in his body, which was viewed by everyone else as some sort of abomination since it should not have been possible to survive like he did without it. He went on to explain how his own family had grown to resent and hate him since they saw him as worthless since he was born this way, and then when he turned 7 alongside his brother. Twins in all but the hair color since he had blonde while Menma had orange. His brother had made the sole heir to both of the family's names. He began to cry again as he remembered the people laughing at him as he was dragged out of the house by his own brother and thrown onto the streets without so much as a care about his well-being. Then the icing on this cake of misery was that his own father had been the one to shove him back out when he tried to get back inside with nothing more than a pack filled with a few essentials and a letter expressing their hatred of him as well as the papers disowning him. "I see, that's quite a life you've had. I am surprised you were able to take it all and still walk with your head high," he said. "I don't know why," said Naruto as he wiped the tears from his face yet again. "I am not important to anyone." The stranger thinks before he does a deep sigh and runs his hand through his hair as if he is annoyed at something. "Fucking toads," he mutters loud enough for Naruto to hear. "Toads?" asked Naruto, who was genuinely confused about that random response since it was quite literally that. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how knowledgeable are you of the ninja world and the animal clans that they summon to aid them?" the stranger asks all of a sudden. Naruto just looked at him with an even more confused look on his face since he had not been trained. Sure, he picked up a term or two here and there, but when people saw him they would stop their conversations to spout out insults at him and put him down emotionally. Seeing his confused expression plastered on his face, the stranger decided he would have to educate Naruto on such things when he decided to escort the boy to Iron Country. No reason not to, since an educated kid would probably make it easier for him to survive there, especially when it comes to the samurais who have high honor values. "Right, well, I might as well get to the heart of the matter. A while ago the Toad clan, who are toads that are capable of speaking, made a prophecy. Now most of the animal clans ignore them as they are very vague in a riddle-like way and just ignore them. But keep an eye on them until signs of the prophecy kick in. The Toad clan had told their summoner named Jiraiya the prophecy. Now I know you don't know anything about the animal clans, but there's a hidden law regarding them and it states that no summoner should know about any prophecies. The reason being is due to the fact it can get misinterpreted, which can lead to unimaginable chaos and help bring it to fruition. However, I believe the prophecy the old Toad Elder made is connected to your current predicament. I shall recite it," he says as he recites the prophecy. Naruto heard the prophecy and thought hard about it. He had no idea how or even if the thing was about him in any way. It mentioned that 2 demons would fight, and while Menma had one sealed within him as was well known in the village, he did not. Yet it did mention that a stranger would train the other one. The whole thing made his brain hurt since he was so confused about it all. "So they threw me out to train Menma for the fight it told about in the future," said Naruto with an angry growl. "Just great. As if they needed more of a reason to throw me out like they did. That is why the law for the animal clans are in place, to prevent things like that from happening. People do stupid things and misinterpret. If you want to be mad at someone, be mad at the Toad clan, your parents, and probably Jiraiya. They are the ones who did this to you, and possibly Konoha," he says as he puts slightly more energy into the flame, making it a bit brighter and helps to calm the boy down. "I get it," said Naruto calmly as he took a deep breath. "I'll calm down. So, reiterating my original question, why are you going to Iron Country?" he asked, and his tone was of one looking for a different answer. "Because I have no chakra. Without it I can't be a shinobi, so I thought that I could at least learn to become a samurai since they don't let shinobi in their country." "I see," the stranger said as he ponders while 2 sword pommels stick out from his clothing. "Wait," asked Naruto as he saw the swords sticking out, "are you a samurai too?" He gave a small chuckle, to which he took out both swords and stabbed them into the ground. They were both beautifully crafted weapons. One of them had a shiny blue emitting an aura of intense peace with some strange sigils on them, while the other one was a bright red emitting a very dark aura that would make him feel as if he is being choked to death with the same strange sigils on them. These are my swords. Light and dark. Both of them represent balance of sorts. Light and dark are said to not work in unison, but these two, they work in unison due to me. A normal samurai cannot wield them. The blue one would give anyone who isn't me a shock, while the red one would drain them of their very life force, leaving them a husk," he said as they both shine in the moonlight. "Can you teach me?" asked Naruto with stars in his eyes at the sight of the finely crafted weapons this stranger had on his person. He gives a smile. "I am afraid you wouldn't last day one. I am a hard teacher and expect the one I train to last against me. I am not the perfect teacher for you. I may look soft, but I can be a cruel teacher," he says as he pats his head like a puppy. Naruto only growled as this stranger thought so little of him. "I can take your training if you give me a chance," shouted Naruto with conviction in his voice as the determination within him swelled to its very limit. Well, I can train you as we go to Iron Country, and if you manage to last those training seasons I may train you," he says. "Yes," shouted Naruto as he held up a fist in the air. Finally someone was willing to actually help him, even with the truth of his abnormality, instead of putting him down like everyone else. "Along the way I might educate you on what you missed from school due to your neglect. You can't take on the world if you're not as smart as a ninja now, can you?" he asked. Naruto made to say something at this point, but it was then that he fell onto his back, fully exhausted from the day's events. It appeared that the adrenaline of being in a life or death situation was finally wearing off and the fatigue had kicked in. The stranger merely shakes his head. Kids are always so full of energy. The next few weeks, the two of them traveled towards Iron Country, with surprisingly no other run-ins with people trying to attack them in some way. Sure, there were a few merchants here and there, but nothing else. In that time, the stranger explained the way of the shinobi world, which Naruto absorbed said knowledge like a sponge, yet after a week, Naruto wanted to train. The stranger simply laughed as he saw the young boy so eager to learn, and yet did nothing other than show him the basics on how to wield a blade properly. As they neared their destination of Iron Country, with the main village being within view of the both of them on the horizon, that was when Naruto made a bit of a scene. "I have traveled with you for the last 2 weeks and you haven't trained me at all," said Naruto in anger. He merely sighs. He's been ignoring him for the training part and was hoping he would get the point, but he might as well go with a direct approach since the kid wouldn't learn otherwise. "Here, this is why you wouldn't be able to handle my training," he simply says before he puts his hand on his chest, to which a glow surrounds Naruto before his body slams onto the floor roughly. Naruto tried to move his body in any way, yet he was not able to do so in any manner. It felt like he had something heavy, yet liquid-like all over him in a manner that was pushing him down with enough force to the point that he wasn't able to move yet not utterly crush everything that was in his body. "Kami," said Naruto, yet with a great strain to himself since it was hard to even speak with this force on him like this, "please help me. This is why you wouldn't be able to handle my training," he said as he snaps his fingers and disables the gravity modifier from him. "When it comes to training under me, I ensure you get hard training. You start at 10 times the normal gravity for the entire training and I improve it without you knowing up to as many times as I wish. If you aren't able to handle 10 times the normal gravity, you wouldn't be able to survive. The gravity modifier I have on me is very heavy and I can raise it," he said as he crossed his arms. He's hoping that lesson got through to him so he wouldn't have to teach an even harsher one if he didn't. "Okay," said Naruto as he got up off the ground and dusted himself off of all the dust that he had on him. "I get it. I am not strong enough to learn your method. But you do have the drive to get stronger, which is what makes a strong warrior. Long as you keep that drive you can pretty much do anything," he says. "I don't really believe you," said Naruto with a bit of a pout. "Kid, tell me this. What do you think makes a strong warrior?" he asks as he kneels down to his level. "Honestly," said Naruto in thought of that question, he had never thought about it, and his mind was blank on the subject. "I have no idea, I never thought about it. The drive, what I said is true. Everyone has a drive to become something, to protect loved ones, to vanquish evil. Getting stronger is always supported by the drive. Although some don't believe it, that drive is what fuels the person. My drive is to always be the strongest and to protect who I love and to defeat any evil I see. So tell me, kid, what do you want your drive to be? The strongest to prove to everyone you aren't weak, or to protect the ones you hold dear to you?" he asked. Naruto thought long and hard on what he was asked, not sure what the answer was to it, but eventually a grin appeared on his face as it became clear to him. "Both," was the answer Naruto gave him. "Good answer," he says as he ruffles his hair. "Well," said Naruto as he began to walk towards the village, "I thank you for escorting me here. I hope to see you again in the future." "Hey kid," the stranger yelled to catch his attention. Naruto stopped mid-step and turned around to see what the man had to say. "Catch," he yells as he throws over a wrapped object. "Thanks," said Naruto as he caught it. From the shape of the object he guessed it was a book of some kind, hopefully full of samurai stances and techniques, but he was unsure of that or another very important thing that he felt like such an idiot for not asking 2 weeks ago when they met. "Who are you? I never asked for your name." "Hey, me too, but you may call me Paragon," he said. Right before Naruto's very eyes he vanished into thin air, leaving a cloud of dust as if he was never there in the first place. This caused Naruto to freak out quite a bit, since just who the hell had he been traveling with? Sure, he knew that Shinobi had such abilities when there were things close by, but they were on a hill overlooking the massively wide open field, so there was no way to use such a thing. Naruto calmed down, though it took a bit. Once he was calm enough to actually get his mind of the apparently magical companion he had traveled with, since in all honesty he had no other way to explain what the hell just happened, he tore the wrapping off the object he had been given. He had been right when he assumed it was a book of some kind, since it really couldn't be anything else. Taped to the front was a letter with his name on it, which he opened to see what it was, and read it. Happy late birthday Naruto, you are stronger than you possibly think. Paragon. That was all that was written, but to Naruto it meant the world to see someone think he was worth the effort. So he pocketed the letter and looked at the book gifted to him. It was black in color with what appeared to be a 3-leaf clover in the center of it. There were some squiggly lines that outlined the borders of the book as well as some clouds, all the graphics being silver in color while the book itself was jet black. Naruto opened up the book in glee, but that glee faded quite quickly as he saw that the pages were all blank. He went through all of them and yet not one of them had anything on them, or at least so he thought at first. He thumbed through it again, and it was the second time he saw a number in black ink appear out of nowhere. It was simply the number 13. Naruto was unsure as to why that number was there, for in his mind he always thought the number is unlucky, but he highly doubted that the book was cursed in some way, so he was going to go off the second thought he had of not fully understanding this thing until he was 13 years old and not his last one of Paragon being an asshole and playing some sort of sick prank on him. So with his newly acquired book in mind, he set out towards the village once more, and onwards towards his destiny. 9 years later, the past 9 years had been hard for Naruto. But in a good sort of manner, since he was happy, he had an apartment of his own. The proper means of getting money to acquire the things he needed by being a courier in his spare time, since many a person paid for a strong young man to carry the heavy things they did not want or were not able to carry themselves. In 6 years, he had put himself through hell in his training regimen so as to gain the muscular body he had acquired. He was, for lack of a better word, ripped to all hell. He had abs, muscles in all the right places, and the body that many a woman desired, and the fact that he was only 13 only made it better since he was still growing. He had come to this village to train under the samurai. And at first they were not willing to teach him since apparently they used chakra as well for their techniques. When Naruto had first heard this, he was greatly saddened to think that he had come all this way for nothing. But in his moment of anger, the sheer will, he had to learn sword. He demanded to be taught, and went so far as to demand that Mifune himself teach him, the action of which got the shock of all the samurai who heard him. They warned the boy to cease such demands if he valued his life. Yet day after day Naruto returned to the main building where Mifune resided in and called out to him for hours to train him. Mifune heard him, of course, since the boy was literally shouting it, but he basically ignored him time and time again. After 2 straight months of this boy yelling at him, Mifune finally went down to deal with him personally. While he had expected Naruto to continue to demand an apprenticeship to the man, he was as shocked as everyone else when he saw the boy drop to his knees and literally beg to be taught by what he claimed was the strongest of the samurai. This piqued Mifune's interest a bit since the boy did understand to ask instead of demand, so he invited the boy to a quick meeting with some tea between the two of them. Mifune asked about the boy, mainly the basics about himself and where his parents were. Naruto told him everything about himself, and just as he expected, the fact that Naruto had no chakra shocked him as it had the other samurai he told since coming to this place. But to hear that the infamous Minato Namikaze had literally disowned his own child for something like this only angered the man who had at one point respected the shinobi. That respect was now gone since a father should care for their child, no matter the situation. Naruto expected Mifune to send Naruto away like the others had before, but instead he told Naruto to follow him. He took Naruto to the vault that lay beneath the building, which was massive in size with many doors sealing off so many different things. Mifune led him to one in particular that had multiple warning signs on it that expressed that the contents of the vault could kill. Mifune pulled out the key to the vault, the only one for this place since the other doors were closed with seals, and used it to open the door. He walked in with Naruto, and he saw that there was only one object in it. On a single pedestal in the center of the room was a mounted sword that was sheathed in a blood-red scabbard. Mifune looked at the boy and told him if he truly thought that he was worthy of being taught by him, then he would have to prove it and pick up the blade. Naruto was skeptical about this since it was odd, even more so than the glass orb with the blue flames he touched a few months ago. Yet he had not come this far to give up now of all times, so if failing meant his death then he would accept it since he had nothing else, so he cautiously picked the blade up with both hands. He saw that the blade was kept in place by 2 straps that had to be removed to unsheathe the blade from its scabbard, so he did that and pulled the blade out to see the blade itself. What he saw amazed him, since the blade was a unique blade. It was a katana that had been masterfully crafted with silver-tipped edges, But the thing that made the blade unique was the red line that zigzagged along the entire blade all the way to a few inches short of the tip. The lines seemed like they were alive somehow, as they appeared to be pulsing somehow. Naruto held the blade in his hands and swung it a few times before he sheathed it once more back into its scabbard. Once he did so, he then looked at Mifune, who was standing there with an open-mouthed shocked look. Naruto was confused as to why he was looking at him like this, but Mifune composed himself and explained why he was. The blade he had picked up was called gashi, which meant starving to death. The blade had been forged by several blacksmiths who literally died making it, since the metal they used was essentially chakra leeching. They had found the metal in the remnants of a meteorite that crashed near their home and wanted to make a blade like no other with it. One by one they worked themselves to literal death as the blade drained them dry off all the chakra in their system, yet their desire to complete the blade spurred them onwards until it was done. Many had tried to wield the blade in the tears since it had been forged, Mifune included, but no one was able to use it since the more people it sucked dry. The more the blade's hunger grew, and that was when the red pulsing line began to appear and grow as it did. Mifune had been the one to seal it away from the world so that no one else died trying to wield it, but then Naruto came and told him that he was born without chakra at all in his system, which should have not been possible, so he thought that the boy could wield the blade, and he had been correct since the blade did not react to his touch in the slightest. Since the boy had passed his impromptu test, he agreed to train the boy personally. The word spread fast amongst the samurai of the village that the boy wielded the infamous gashi, and his popularity skyrocketed from that moment onwards. Even the samurai who refused to train him came and apologized sincerely since they had been blind to his true potential. So Mifune got him an apartment to live in as well as the part-time job as a courier, since it was a perfect way to train his muscles in time. He trained Naruto 4 out of the 7 days, quite literally into the ground. The other 3 he was expected to relax, doing no more than his courier job. Naruto took to his training regimen quite well, with his body becoming stronger over the course of 6 years. It was in his training that he learned that his lack of chakra gave him an advantage to many situations. Like one of the main ones was the fact that sensors could not sense him. Then there was the fact that he was immune to genjutsu, since it was chakra-based and his body became immune to it. Naruto laughed when he learned that since the 2 proud clans of the Uchiha as well as the Hyuga would be so pissed to hear such things, the Uchiha prided themselves on their Sharingan, and to be immune to their abilities made it hilarious to him. Plus without chakra he had no chakra lines to cut off, so the Hyuga and their damned Byakugan were useless. But the most useful thing he learned was the ability to sense ki. This allowed him to see his opponent's moves before they used them and dodge or counter accordingly. It took quite some time to master reading it, but in time Naruto could take on large groups of samurai in a spar, with a wooden practice blade of course, since he was not trying to kill people while training, and easily dodge their attacks before he countered with his own. Mifune had become proud of his student, one who he saw as a sort of surrogate grandson since he was an elderly man. Naruto returned this relationship and started to call him Gramps, which at first he was pissed about since he didn't like it, but eventually it grew on him. At the age of 13, Naruto had shown that he had become the samurai prodigy that Mifune expected him to be when he had first lifted up gashi in the vault. But it was that day that he became stronger than he thought possible. Naruto had never forgotten about the book given to him by Paragon, and that the number 13 was most likely about his age, and he had been right to think that since in the middle of the spar he had with several samurai veterans, he fell over in pain as a new power began to emerge from his body. The samurai tried to aid him in some way, but they were blasted backwards from a huge pulse of power as Naruto screamed to the heavens in pain. Mifune heard his surrogate grandson in pain and appeared with multiple others to help in any way they could. What they saw was Naruto on his knees, punching the ground in a vain attempt to somehow lessen the pain. Yet it did not. His body was covered in what could only be labeled as liquid blackness that was still transparent enough to the point they could see him. Yet they could not help him. Naruto then held up his hand, which confused those surrounding him since they wondered why he did that. Their confusion only amplified when they saw a book, a literal book, of all things, fly through the air and into his hand. The moment he touched it, the darkness began to seep into it and off his body. As the last of it left his body, he breathed heavily as the pain was starting to fade, yet he still passed out. Mifune ordered his men to take Naruto to the hospital, and he picked up the book to see what it was, yet he could not, since it would then fly into Naruto's hands whenever he or anyone else tried to take it. Naruto was put under constant watch, but his body was fine. He just slept for the next 3 days straight before he woke up. He woke up and checked himself out of the hospital before he went to a training ground to be alone. In the 3 days of his coma-like state, he had seen visions of a man who once wielded this book, which he learned was called a grimoire, by the name of Yami Sukahiro. He saw the magical power he had now inherited, and while he was curious as to how the fuck he had gotten literal magical power in a world of chakra, he was not going to look a gift horse in the mouth here and use it. So he used the power in his grimoire to strengthen his body and mind as he trained himself in its use. While Yami was capable of much more than he was able to do himself. That was mainly due to the fact that the man was older and born with magical power. Unlike him, his grimoire only had a few pages written, but Naruto understood in time that more would be revealed as he grew stronger, or pushed past his limits, as Yami had said in his own time world. For the next 3 years he trained in his magical abilities, which shocked many that he had such abilities in the first place, yet were happy for the young man since he had found his own way in the world. On his 16th birthday, Naruto had bid the village farewell for the first time in years as he wanted to travel the world to seek adventure. Mifune had laughed when Naruto had said that since he had been the exact same way at Naruto's age, he told Naruto that he always had a home here if he wanted to ever return, so he wished Naruto good luck as well as the many samurai who he had come to see as family over the years. It wasn't like he had no idea of the world itself though. He had learned that while Iron Country was mainly hostile to shinobi since they were forbidden, there were some cases where a few were allowed inside since it was a diplomatic or financial thing. Hell, he could still remember the time the Kazekage had arrived with all 3 of his children. His oldest son Kankuro had bumped into him as he had walked down the road with his hands in his pockets. Which was clearly Kankuro's fault. He had demanded an apology. Yet Naruto had simply told him to fuck off. This pissed off Kankuro immensely. And he whipped out one of his puppets to attack him. Naruto punched through the thing with one hand before he grabbed Kankuro by the head and lifted him up by it. He then frowned as he began to squeeze his skull hard to the point that Kankuro was crying out in pain. Gaara had simply stood there and smirked at his brother in pain, while Temari laughed since Kankuro had always tried to act tougher than he was. Naruto let him go, but with the warning to not piss him off anymore or else he would kill him with his bare hands. Naruto cracked his knuckles to get his point across as he said it, which made Kankuro lose the color in his face as he simply nodded his head in agreement. They had been there for a few days and in that time Naruto had gotten to know them a bit. Gaara reminded him of himself a bit since people saw him as some sort of freak. Being a Jinchuriki and all, but Naruto had extended the hand of friendship, which to Temari's and Kankuro's shock he accepted. Neither of them was aware that the demon inside him was whispering to Gaara to befriend the man so as to never fight him. He sensed a dark power that dwarfed his own within the boy, and while at first he assumed it was another one of his kind, the energy he felt was not a biju but something else entirely. So as he stood there and saw the massive clearing he would have to cross to get anywhere, he at least had a first stop to go to in the form of Suna. So as he began to walk with his new pack in hand for the moment since he took it off to get the pack of cigarettes he had inside it, one could see his attire on full. He was wearing a jet black muscle t-shirt that showed off his abs. Since what was the point of such a body if he couldn't show it off from time to time? He had simple sandals on his feet since he enjoyed the breeze that he felt in his toes, and to top it off he had a jacket that had a hood that was both black and gold in color, with the picture of a black bull head on the back. He saw this symbol in his visions, and he thought to honor the man whose magic he now wielded by wearing it himself. So with a grin, he pulled out a cigarette. He had started smoking last year since it helped to relax him so much, put it in his mouth and pulled out a lighter to light the thing. He took a quick drag before he started to set off towards a new adventure. Naruto walked alongside a merchant group as they were traveling to town. He had been hired by them since the shinobi they had hired at first had been killed by a few missing nin mixed in with bandits. The merchants had nearly been robbed since they had no one to protect them, but Naruto had appeared and took them all on single-handedly. The shinobi in the group had laughed at him due to the fact that many shinobi saw samurai as inferior, hence why there was only one major village for him in all the elemental countries. Naruto had laughed along with them, which both pissed them off as well as unsettled them immensely to hear it. The next thing they heard was a simple click. Naruto stood there smoking his last cigarette as 3 of the shinobi's heads fell off, followed by their bodies as the blood gushed out of their now vacant necks. This caused the others to take a quick step back in fear. Since here was a young man who had killed 3 of them without moving, or at least that was what it seemed like. Naruto finished up his cigarette before he flicked it to the ground and stomped on it to put it out. Once he did, he vanished from sight, which caused a few of the bandits to try and run for their lives, but they were the first to die. One by one Naruto killed them all, with the last one begging for mercy as he tried and failed to slash Naruto with a kunai when he got close. Naruto didn't even look bothered by the attempt in the slightest. If his face was to go on at all, he had a look like this was so very boring. Which to Naruto it was very much was since these men had not provided any sort of challenge to him. He had easily decimated them with his enhanced speed that his magical power granted him, as well as the element of surprise since they had underestimated him for his age as well as his profession as a samurai. He simply crushed the mon's arm with as he tightened his grip and then punched the man hard enough in the face to the point his neck snapped and he died. The merchants had been grateful for the aid and offered to pay him the entire sum they would have paid the other shinobi if they had still been alive. Naruto told them to throw in some cigarettes and he would do it. Luckily for the merchants, one of them was a smoker and parted with his unopened pack. Hell, after what happened today he decided to quit. So Naruto traveled alongside the group for the next several days, with no new attacks on the caravan as they made their way. Once they made it to the town they were selling their wares, they handed Naruto the money that they promised him, which he thanked them for before he set out to do his own thing. As he walked around for a bit, he bumped into a blonde-haired woman who was followed by a black-haired one who was holding a pig in a dress. "You going to apologize for that brat?" demanded the woman as Naruto had continued to walk without a second thought. "Hey, I am talking to you." "So?" asked Naruto as he continued to keep walking. He had no idea as to who exactly he had bumped into, yet he didn't care to be honest. So, shouted the woman in fury of the disrespect she was getting, and from a brat of all things. "Do you have any idea as to who the hell I am?" "Look at my face," said Naruto as he finally stopped and turned around to look at this annoying woman who was yelling at him. What she saw was a face of someone who couldn't care less, yet for some reason he looked familiar. She couldn't quite place where she saw his face before, but she had a habit of going out gambling in various towns, so maybe she passed by him in one of those places. "Does it look like I care about who the hell you are?" "You should apologize," said the black-haired woman as she came near him. He could see that she was sweating out of fear for his safety. Lady Tsunade is not the nicest person after she has had a bit to drink. "Tsunade huh," said Naruto plainly, yet while he looked like he didn't care, he was more pissed than he let on in his mind. This woman was the godmother of his brother and himself. Yet she never acknowledged his existence like the rest of them other than to state hurtful things as a means to put him down. He was surprised that she didn't recognize him, but he had a feeling that she as well as the rest of them had forgotten him years ago when he was thrown out. It would make sense, but it didn't matter since he didn't care about that anymore. While he had hated them for years after he had left the village, his rigorous training under Mifune had channeled that anger and rage in a far more productive manner, and he had the body to prove that it did. This old hag is the infamous legendary sucker I hear about from various people. With looks like hers I can see why she is called that. You must have had tons of practice to gain such a title. Are you insinuating? Seethed Tsunade as she was seeing red at the implications being made by Naruto. Her assistant Shizune lost all the color in her face as she backed away from the two of them. She knew better than to get between Tsunade and a man who pissed her off like this, mainly from all the times she had attacked Jiraiya in the past. "Oh no," said Naruto with a grin as he waved his hand a bit. "I am not insinuating a thing. I am calling you a cocksucking whore." Tsunade had literal steam coming out of her body as her rage capped off at its peak at this point. She punched the ground in rage, causing the ground to split in between her and Naruto. Naruto was not fazed by it at all since part of his training had been to keep balance on a violently moving platform. This was no different. "Tell me your name so I know where to send your fucking remains," she shouted. "Why don't you try and beat it out of me, you fake-breasted cocksucker?" said Naruto simply as he stood there with his arms crossed. One of the many lessons he had been taught by Mifune had been about how to fight someone using their own anger against them. His ability to read ki only made the lesson easier for him to master since the angrier the opponent was, the easier their ki was able to be read since it was like they were shouting their attacks as they performed them. Naruto thought of himself as a good judge of character, with the ability to know how to push people's buttons like he was doing now. Many a large-breasted woman had been more flat in the past and had tried to enhance themselves in one way or another, either naturally or surgical, but either way it was a tender subject and many women would get pissed being asked about it. So that was why Naruto insulted her as such, since he knew she would attack. And she did not disappoint him since she charged forward with enough power in her fist to blast his head off if it connected with it. But Naruto wouldn't let that happen and simply leaned his head to the left. He tried to jab him again, yet he still dodged her easily. Naruto chuckled as he dodged all her attacks, since he had always heard about how powerful she was growing up. But all the power in the world didn't really help someone who couldn't land a punch. But eventually he grew tired of this and grabbed her hand. He had to admit it stung his hand as he did, but he had felt worse while training. "You should know, you whore of a Sannin," said Naruto as he held her fist in place. She struggled to get it out of his grip, but he was surprisingly stronger than she thought possible. "That when you mess with the Black Bull, you get the horns." Naruto then crushed her hand to the point that the bone could be heard crunching. Before she could scream in pain, he kneed her in the stomach, causing her to cough up blood from the power of the blow. He then grabbed her by the head and slammed her into the ground hard, leaving a small crater where he slammed her. He sensed as several senbon had been launched at him, but he used his blade to deflect them all before he held it out towards Shizune, who stopped mid-step, since if she had taken that last one it would have pierced her throat. No need for that. I am not going to kill her, just making a point to not expect people to bow to you because you are famous. Naruto then sheathed Gashi back into its scabbard before he once more began to walk away. This time with a grin on his face, since he had answered one of the questions he had asked himself in the past. When he had begun to train his body into what it was today, he had set goals for himself, with one of them being to have a body capable of taking one of Tsunade's infamous blows and not only survive it, but to overpower it as well. That was the whole reason why he did all that, since it was if the gods themselves wanted to know the answer to that question and was making bets on it while they did, he could only hope he made one of them rich by literally crushing the Sannin, but he was happier to know that he had achieved his own personal goal in the end. The day was still quite early, but then again the caravan had arrived in the dawning hours of the day, so it made sense. His stomach began to rumble as he walked around the town, and it was then that he decided to get some food to settle it. Outskirts of town. As Naruto had made his way to a place to eat breakfast, a young kunoichi was running through the forest at the moment, all the while fighting off others who had been sent to capture her and bring her home. This young kunoichi's name was Shizuka, and as to why she was running, it was a bit of a story. Shizuka was a kunoichi as well as the future leader of the Nadeshiko village. A village that didn't allow men within, so that it was all kunoichi. She was currently running away due to the fact that she had been told by the current leader that she was destined to marry a student of Jiraiya that can defeat her because of a law from her village. She did not want to marry someone who she not only didn't know in person, but from all the information she had heard about the young man, he was an arrogant asshole who thought so highly of himself to the point it was sickening. She had been told that she was going to be sent alongside her mentor to visit Konoha by the end of the week, but she wouldn't have it and made her escape from the village in the dead of the night. She had not left as stealthily as she had thought she had, since she had Hunter Nin from her village on her tail quite early on, so now here she was running from them since she refused to marry a brat that she could not love. There had only ever been one she would have. While she had been a few years into training under her mentor, Shizuka had met and developed a relationship with a merchant named Sagiri. Despite the law of her village forbidding such a thing, while they hoped to one day change that law so that they could finally be together as they wanted, Sagiri was one day killed by bandits en route to see her at their usual meeting place, prompting Shizuka to live solely for her training and duties to the village, resigned to never love again. In the end, she said that she was going to become stronger one day to become the proper leader that their village would need to survive in this world. Yet in her past there had been a man known as Kokuyo who had been a nuisance to her as well that she had to deal with. Kokuyo was a puppeteer who violently sought the hand of Shizuka in marriage. Even though she spurned his advances multiple times in order to rule the Nadeshiko village through marriage. Wanting to rule over the Nadeshiko village, Kokuyo challenged the Shizuka again and again through the years in an attempt to defeat her, so she would be forced to marry him per the village's rules of marrying a man who beats them in a fight. Because of his ambition, Kokuyo ended up challenging Shizuka 98 times with his various puppets, but each one had been easily destroyed by the latter. Yet he refused to stop and was just biding his time, like right now for instance. Kokuyo appeared with a new puppet that looked like a mech of some sort. And with the push of a button he launched several rockets that exploded near the kunoichi who were chasing his much-desired woman. The rockets were not deadly, but the explosion let out a paralyzing gas that caused them all to fall over since their bodies became weak and unable to move on their own. With them out of the way, Kokuyo made to attack Shizuka. Yet she had disappeared from sight in the gas cloud. She reappeared from above, blowing up his newest puppet by kicking it in the center, breaking a hole in it, then throwing a powerful explosive kunai into its hollow chest before she jumped away and made the hand sign to blow it up. She hoped Kokuyo would die with it, but those hopes were dashed when she saw him being launched into the air far into the distance. She breathed a sigh of relief and began to run off to find a place to catch her breath since she had been running and fighting for hours without rest. As she did that, Naruto had finished up his meal and went to a general store to pick up some things, including a few packs of smokes as well as a new lighter since the one he had broken from overuse. They were cheap, so it was not too much a loss since he easily replaced it. He wanted to get one of those fancy metallic ones with the pictures engraved into it, but he had not found a place that sold them yet. But then again, he had only been to 2 towns in the whole time he had left home, so it was understandable. So he asked for directions towards Suna, which was the destination he had in mind to go first. It had been a while since he had seen his friends from there, so he thought to go to them instead of the other way around. So with the newfound directions he had acquired, he made it out of the town in one piece and into the forest. He traveled for about 20 minutes before he came to what appeared to be the site of a major battle of some kind. He saw what he thought was the bodies of about a dozen kunoichi, but he looked closer and saw that they were still breathing. He turned them over so that they were on their backs. What the hell happened here? Asked Naruto in genuine curiosity. What kind of battle left apparently no casualties of any sort? These women had not a single wound on them. We were ambushed, said one of them weakly as she struggled to even say that. The drug that made her unable to do so was very strong. Do you need medical assistance? Asked Naruto. There is a town not too far from here. I can carry a few of you, but it would take multiple trips if I did that. Don't need help, said the woman angrily. She had been trained to be a strong independent woman most of her life along with the others in her village, so to hear a man offer her help out of the blue made her not trust his motives and expected he would try and sexual assault her in some manner if given the chance. Okay, said Naruto as he began to walk away from the glaring woman, not sure as to why she was doing so. He had only offered to help her, so where the hell was this hostility coming from? Was just trying to be helpful, but if you don't want it, it's no skin off my bone. Naruto continued to walk along until he came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing were a few boulders, with another woman sitting on one of them. She was resting, yet was still alert as she was. Naruto thought to talk to the woman, since he was curious as to why she was out here alone and wanted to see if she knew why there were so many paralyzed women not too far away from there. He walked up to her with no hassles of any sort, yet the fact he did so shocked her in a manner that matched Mifune's when he had picked up Gashi in the first place. How the hell did you walk past all my trap seals I set up like that? She asked as she got a kunai ready to use if she needed to. She was unsure as to whom he was, but the fact he was a man as well as not Kokuyo made her not attack him immediately. What trap seals? Asked Naruto as he looked behind him. It was only the fact that she pointed them out that he saw them in the first place. Well, how about that? Didn't know I could do that really. Do what? Asked the woman, who was even more confused about this whole thing. Well, before I answer your question, said Naruto as he took a seat on one of the other rocks. He was not sensing any desire of attacks on his person from her, so he was not in a defensive mood. She had a kunai, true, but it was out of her own defense than anything else, so he was not going to attack her for that. Can I get your name at least so I know what to call you? My name is Shizuka, said the now named Shizuka as she stood her ground. Sure, the man in front of her was sitting with his sword still in its scabbard, but she knew to never underestimate her opponent no matter the situation. Yours? The name is Naruto. So then why are you here, Naruto? Here to hunt me? Hunt you? Asked Naruto in a confused tone. Woman, I just left my home about a week and a half ago with no set destination and the desire for adventure. Just why would I be hunting you? So you were not a hunter, nin? She asked as she lowered her kunai. For some reason she believed him when he said he was here for her. Nope, said Naruto as he pulled out a cigarette and lit it up. He took a few puffs before he continued. I am a samurai, not a shinobi. Okay, she said as she looked him over. She saw that he didn't have anything on his person that said otherwise other than his sword and a book that he had in a pouch that was on his side, but samurai used them exclusively, so it was expected to be on his person. She was unsure of why the book was there, but it was probably one he was reading to pass the time or full of samurai techniques he was learning since he was young looking. So back to my first question. Before I answer yours, said Naruto as he held up his hand to stop her before she said more. Do you have any clue as to why there is about a dozen paralyzed women back the way I came from? Those kunoichi were chasing me, said Shizuka simply. And you decided to stop and rest about 20 minutes away from where they are. Woman, I got to say you were crazy if you thought that this was a good idea. I was resting since they have been chasing me for the past several hours, said Shizuka with a sigh, so I took the time to prepare for when they eventually arrived and set up traps. So once again, back to my first question as to how you were able to walk right by them like you did. Oh well, that was a surprise to me as well, said Naruto. In all the years he had been trained, he had never thought to test with seals or the like since he was unable to use such a thing. So apparently he was able to walk past seals with a sensor in them so they wouldn't activate. This was good news for him that he filed away for later since he had a feeling that it would prove useful later down the line. But to make a short story short, I was born without chakra in my body, so apparently your seals don't sense me and so didn't activate like they were supposed to. And this is surprising to you? Asked Shizuka in shock that such a man existed. How are you alive if you have no chakra? All living things have it in their bodies. Well, I don't, said Naruto as he finished up his cigarette and put it out with his foot, and because of that fact I am able to walk around without people or seals apparently sensing me as I do so. comes in handy from time to time. Oh yeah. Like how? Like when your sensei is trying to find you after pranking him by replacing his sake he stores away with something else, said Naruto with a chuckle as he remembered Mifune hunting him for quite a bit with the declaration that he would make Naruto's next few days training a living hell for that. He had been true to his word, but Naruto still found it funny along with many other samurai who heard what he had done. I don't even want to know, said Shizuka as she held her head in her hand. You asked, pointed out Naruto with a laugh, don't remind me. More would have been said, but it was then that the two of them felt the ground rumble beneath their feet. Naruto was quicker on his feet and jumped out of the way of the metallic hand that popped out of the ground and grabbed a hold of Shizuka. The rest of the massive puppet appeared shortly afterwards, but Naruto stood there and observed what was happening with a hint of amusement since this was not something you saw every day. Even in this crazy world of shinobi controlling the elements, he saw a man with a purple shirt in the distance with his hand out in front of him, showing that he was the one who was controlling the puppet. Do you require assistance? Asked Naruto with a shout so that she would hear him. No, I do not, she shouted back as she slipped out of the puppet's grasp and stabbed the hand with another explosive kunai she had on her person. She jumped away right as the hand exploded, destroying the puppet it was attached to as it did. Naruto simply smirked since it appeared that she had everything here handled, but it was then that he felt such ominous ki coming from the purple-shirted man. Naruto could see that he was smirking to himself, which was an odd thing to do when your property was blown up like his just was. My technique drives a wedge through the target's body when they defeat 100 of my puppets, said the man as he began to cackle. Naruto heard him say this, and his sweat dropped as he heard him say it. It was as if the man was trying so very hard to paint himself as a creepy villain of sorts, which Naruto had to admit he was pulling off so very well right now. Naruto then looked over to see how Shizuka was doing, and it was then that he noticed she was suspended in midair, unable to move her body of her own will. How about now? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Do you need my help now? I don't need your damn help, Shizuka shouted in rage as she was trying in vain to break free from the chakra strings that bound her. You sure about that? Asked Naruto with a hint of mock worry in his voice, knowing full well that she needed help. He just wanted to hear her ask for it. She wasn't able to answer as the man pulled her in towards him, shocking her through the strings so she could not speak. It was only as she neared Kokuyo that she knew she had to swallow her pride and ask for assistance. For the love of Kami, fucking help me, she shouted to Naruto. All you had to say, said Naruto with a chuckle. He then walked towards the man holding her prisoner. Stay away from me, Kokuyo shouted towards him. This has nothing to do with you. At first it didn't, said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, but the lady asked for help, and what kind of a man would I be if I walked away from a damsel in distress? Stay back, shouted Kokuyo in fear that the man would do something. Both his hands had to be used for his technique to remain active and his puppets had all been destroyed. True, that had been the plan since it was the way his technique worked, but still it was that fact that left him at a serious disadvantage right now. Sure thing, said Naruto as he stopped about a yard away from him, but while I am here, I got to ask, on a scale of 1 to 10, just how attached are you to your hands? What? Asked Kokuyo in confusion since that was quite literally the strangest question to ask not just him, but anyone in general really. 10, I guess. It was as he said that he felt a massive amount of pain in his arms as his hands had been clearly severed at the wrist. It was only then that he saw that Naruto had his blade out and that it was dripping with his blood from just cutting his hands off. The shock of the whole thing made the man fall to his knees in terror as well as pain as the blood began to gush out of his newly acquired wounds. How had the brat cut his hands off like that? Who had trained him to do such a thing? Not anymore, you're not, said Naruto as he held his hand to help Shizuka up to her feet. She looked at it, but then she slapped it away as she got back on her own feet. The whole time her face was looking down as she blushed in embarrassment since she had been saved by a man of all people. But the moment she got to her feet, she whipped out her kunai and slit Kokuyo's throat so as to make sure he was dead this time. No sense leaving it to chance. It was only as she finished the deed that she fell over in exhaustion. Damn it, she seethed in anger about her predicament. You okay? Asked Naruto as he stood there. Oh yeah, Shizuka said sarcastically. I am just doing great. I just thought I would take a nap here in the middle of this field since it is such a nice fucking day. You know, you don't have to be such a bitch about it, said Naruto simply. His response surprised her since she had not expected it. You heard me. How dare you call me that? How dare I, the man who saved you from Mr. I am gonna molest you with my creepy ass hands. Call you a bitch for asking you if you were okay. Well, by that logic I must be sentenced to death since I made a living as a courier for years before I left home, which meant helping so many people. Damn it. How can I do such horrific things as helping or caring? I am scum. Are you done being an asshole yet? Asked Shizuka with a glare. She really hated smartasses. One more, said Naruto as he held up a finger. Man, with such a reputation such as mine, I am going straight to hell when I die. No judgment. Just an all-out express trip right through the fiery gates that separate the world of the living. I get it, said Shizuka as she managed to get to a sitting position. You made your point. Are you sure? Asked Naruto with a smirk. I got more. Yes, I am sure. Are you done being too much of a bitch to accept help of any kind? I am fine, she said as she took a deep breath. I just need a minute to readjust. That technique Kokuyo used sapped my strength a bit. I feel it coming back slowly. Well, that is good to know, said Naruto as he stretched a bit. He then took out his blood cloth that he used to wipe his blade clean of the stuff before he sheathed it back up. He may have to wipe it clean from use, but he learned that he didn't need to sharpen it though. Apparently it was a self-sharpening blade that used the chakra as sucked out of people to stay pristine. Naruto was not one to question that explanation since it worked for him. Plus it saved his the time of sharpening it with a whetstone from time to time. So are you good to head out on your own? Ah, said Shizuka with mock hurt as well as a sarcastic tone of voice, and here I thought you cared about me. I barely know you, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, so why would I care about you? I swear to Kami, Shizuka said under her breath, my mentor was right to say that men can be such idiots at times. Men can also hear clearly, said Naruto as he began to walk away. Good luck, Shizuka, with whatever it is that you are doing. Fucking asshole, she said to herself as she tried to get to her feet, but she fell back down since it hurt quite a bit to try to change positions. Well, at least I have time to get away from the area before the hunter nin arrives. As soon as she said that, the 12 kunoichi she had mentioned arrived as well as surrounded her. Sweet Kami, why? It is time to stop running, Shizuka, said Takiwa, her friend from the village. We are taking you back to the village. I refuse to be married off like they planned for me. Shizuka shouted in rage, but that wall she was able to do since in her weakened state she could not do much else. A few of the kunoichi stepped forward and picked her up to begin the process of transporting her back home, but they all stopped when they heard someone whistle behind them. Sorry to bother you ladies, said Naruto as he walked forward. I am not here to interrupt you in any way, but have you seen my lighter? I dropped it here and I could really use a smoke right about now. You have a problem, said Shizuka with a glare. This man had left her to fend for herself when she clearly needed assistance, and had walked away from her. Sure, she had been cold towards his offers of help, but he should have stayed anyway since it was the right thing to do, damn it. Plus to hear he only came back for his fucking lighter was the icing on the cake since she was even more clearly in need of assistance and yet he was not making any move to help her in some way. Yeah, I know that, said Naruto simply as he looked at the woman. I need a smoke and I don't have my damn lighter. Is this it? Asked one of the kunoichi who saw it and showed his red plastic lighter. Yes it is, said Naruto with a sigh. Thank you Samu. Before he could finish his thanks, the kunoichi crushed it with her hand as a smirk plastered itself on her face. Oops, was all she said as she and the rest of the kunoichi laughed at the loss of his lighter. Man, said Naruto as he held his head in his hand, is everyone from your village a bitch? 'Cause it seems like they are. As he expected, they became enraged that he insulted them as such. And it was because of that he felt their ki clearly and knew exactly how they were going to attack him. He dodged the kunai launched at his person by spinning his blade, the few kunoichi who charged forward by punching them with enough force to knock them out, and the one who blew a large fireball towards him by cutting it in half with gashi. The blade glowed as it cut through the jutsu as one does butter with a heated blade, which was to say very easily. To say the rest of the kunoichi were surprised was a bit of an understatement. But the fact that a man was standing his ground against them was unacceptable. Sure, there were plenty of them who could, but this boy was far too young and green looking to be able to. It was an insult to their profession and they would correct it here and now. They surrounded him so that retreat was not an option for him, yet he made no attempt to. This was not the first time he had trained in this exact type of situation, and he was grateful for those sessions since it made this whole thing easier for him since he got it down instinct at this point. They all attacked as one, and using his blade he took each and every one of them down one by one with skills that showed off his mastery of the samurai arts. Now while he used gashi to strike them down, he kept it sheathed as he did. He learned that he could still use it like this since the straps on the end to keep it in its scabbard did just that perfectly. Plus while the blade was sheathed, its draining effect was still active, but at a far less rate as he used it this way. These women were attacking him, this was true, but he wasn't going to kill them without just cause. He had no idea as to what was happening right now other than Shizuka being captured, as well as the destruction of his lighter. Sure, he was pissed that he would have to go and buy another one, but it was cheap and he was not going to murder people over it. Once they were all down except for Takiwa, who was more shocked that Naruto had effortlessly beaten them than anything else, Naruto simply sighed. So can you explain what the hell is going on here? He asked, hoping she would answer so as to clear this whole thing up for him. After you just killed my kunoichi, growled Takiwa, you can go to hell. Killed them? Said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Lady, my blade was sheathed the whole time, they aren't dead, just knocked out, I don't kill without just cause. Oh, how noble of you, Takiwa responded sarcastically. Well, I am a samurai, so I would think so, said Naruto in retort. Wait a minute, you are a samurai? Last time I checked, said Naruto as he crossed his arms. So why is a samurai involved in shinobi matters like this? Because shinobi or not, said Naruto with a wave of his hand, I help those who ask for it, at least as long as they are in the right. I didn't ask for your help though, said Takiwa confused. True, said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders before he pointed at Shizuka, who had been placed onto her knees, but she did, and so I helped her. Is this true? Asked Takiwa to Shizuka. Yes, said Shizuka with a growl, she didn't want to admit it since it made her appear weak to others in her village. He saved me from a technique that Kokuyo used to control my body. Well, our leader will be told about this upon our return, said Takiwa. Why are you dragging the young lady back? Asked Naruto since he was curious as to the reason this was all happening in the first place. It's obvious that she doesn't want to go. She has been destined to marry the student of the Toad Sage Jiraiya, said Takiwa, and in doing so will help our village since it will ally ourselves with the strongest village in the elemental countries. Student of Jiraiya, huh? Said Naruto with a shake of his head. Well, that leaves only 3 people to choose from, not a lot of options really if you think about it. Wait, said Takiwa since she was confused from him saying that, 3? There were only 2. No, there were 3, said Naruto. When he had been young, both Tsunade and Jiraiya had tried to teach him something, anything really, yet without chakra he could not learn via their methods, so after a week of trying they had just up and left him to train himself like his own parents had, but since one of them is a married man and that only leaves 2, so I guess you were right after all. I am confused here, said Takiwa as she took in what had been told to her. Who is this other person? You are looking at him, said Naruto simply. I thought you said you were a samurai. And I am, said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, but I was trained into one for the past 9 years. I was trained by Jiraiya for about a week before he just stopped. And why would he do that? Because like many, he could not see my true potential and just took me at face value, his loss really, since Mifune saw it and trained me instead. You were trained by the samurai general Mifune himself, asked Takiwa. She was impressed since the man had never trained anyone. To hear of a student he had was quite a thing indeed. He sure did, said Naruto with a grin. Gramps trained me into the ground day in and day out, but after 9 years I came out alright. So are you going to fight me to free Shizuka? Asked Takiwa, who had one hand on her own blade in preparation of such a thing. What? No, said Naruto. His response shocked the hell out of the both of them. So you are not here to break her free? Then why the hell are you here? I came back to get my lighter, said Naruto simply, but then that bitch broke it and they attacked me when I insulted them. What else was I supposed to do? Just stand there like some sort of idiot and let them kill me? My head hurts, said Shizuka. This was all screwing with her mind quite a bit to the point of it escalating into a massive headache. So what now? Asked Takiwa, who wanted to make sure the young man was not going to attack her out of the blue. Why are you asking me? Asked Naruto. I am heading back into town to get a new lighter, then heading to Suna to see an old friend of mine. You do what you want, since I don't control you. Naruto then waved goodbye as he walked past them in the direction of the town. It wasn't even noon yet, so the shop would still be open right now. As he disappeared into the distance, the 2 kunoichi could only stare at his back in befuddlement since he was a strange man indeed. 1 week later, Naruto had made it to the edge of the desert region that was a major portion of Wind Country and stocked up on essentials before he had set foot in the desert. He had to admit it, but he fucking hated the desert since it was too damn hot for him. Yet in his mind this was just another form of training for him to power through and he would just have to learn to adapt on the fly. It took him a week, but he had finally reached Suna itself. He had not known what to expect, but to see a massive circular wall surrounding a village was the last thing he had expected. It made sense in a strategic sense, but that was not really his problem since he had come to see his friends. He was able to walk through the front open part without much hassle, and once inside he began to walk around since seeing a new place was a fascinating thing for him. All his life he had only either been in either Konoha or Iron Village, This place amazed him with its design, but that fascination was soon replaced with the desire to check up and find his friends. This place was big, so finding them would take a while. "What do you mean you sold the last one?" shouted a pissed-off man from a store to Naruto's left. It was a puppet store where shinobi who specialized in the art could buy the raw materials to make their own as well as the tools to do so. Out of curiosity, Naruto decided to investigate since he was curious as to how this would all play out. What Naruto saw made him chuckle a bit since he knew how it would end. Inside the store was Kankuro, in his usual garb and his face painted up. "I am sorry, sir," said the shopkeep, who was afraid of the pissed-off brother of Gaara. "But someone came in to buy all the parts you were looking for. We should have a new shipment of them in a week or two." "Damn it. I need them now." It was at this point that Naruto decided to intervene to aid the poor man and placed his hand on Kankuro's shoulder with a bit of a tight grip. "Why don't you let the poor man do his job, Kankuro?" said Naruto. "From what I heard, it is not his fault." "And just who the hell? Oh fuck," said Kankuro as he turned around to see the first of the person who dared try and tell him what to do. He was about to give said person a piece of his mind, but the second he saw Naruto's face, all the color in his own disappeared as the memories of what happened last time came flooding back. "What did I say about what would next time you pissed me off?" said Naruto as the top half of his head became black with his eyes glowing white, giving him a very intimidating look that made Kankuro break out into a heavy sweat since he feared that Naruto would kill him. He was fairly certain that Temari and Gaara wouldn't even care since they threatened to kill him all the time, plus Naruto was Gaara's only friend only made it worse. "I am sorry," said Kankuro weakly, "don't apologize to me." "Apologize to him," said Naruto as he pointed at the shopkeep. Kankuro did as Naruto said and said he would come back when the new shipment came in, but to please reserve at least one of the parts he needed for him. The shopkeep agreed to this and then the two of them left the store. Naruto followed Kankuro as he led the way to the cage tower and made his way up the several flights of stairs to reach the main office. He wondered why the hell Kankuro brought him here, but Kankuro was too scared of him to even talk and simply opened the door for him and gestured for him to enter. He did so, which once he was inside Kankuro closed the door and left as quickly as he could to find some means to relax and calm his heart down before he had a heart attack from how fast it was pumping from the fear. Naruto had entered the room and was genuinely surprised to see his friend Gaara behind the desk talking to his sister Temari about something. It had been about 5 years since they had seen each other, but Naruto still recognized the two of them fairly well. Then again, it was hard to forget Gaara, since he had a face capable of killing with his blank emotionless stare. As he entered, the two of them looked up to see who had entered the room unexpectedly, and they were surprised to see just who it was. "Hello, old friend," said Naruto as he walked forward to speak with the two of them. "It's been a while, hasn't it, Gaara?" "That it has indeed," said Gaara with a smirk. Naruto had to admit to himself that it looked good on him, mainly since the last time they met Gaara was incapable of showing emotions like he was now. He wondered what had happened since they last met, but it was apparently good if his ability to emote was a clear indication. "So what brings you here to Suna?" "Honestly," said Naruto as he took a seat and got comfortable in it, "I am seeking adventure and thought to visit my friends I hadn't seen in years, so I decided to make this place my first destination as I began my travels." "Well, I am happy that you are here," said Gaara, as he asked Temari to get something to drink for him as well as their guest. Temari left the room, all the while blushing as she did. She had remembered Naruto over the years and had fallen in love with the young man in the days he got to know them. She was attracted to strong men, and to hear about a person with the world's cruelest handicap in the form of no chakra overcoming such odds to become stronger proved how strong he really was. Plus, since the 5 years she had last seen him, he had a more muscular body only made her blush as she saw it with her own eyes. As she went to go get those drinks, which she would usually be against since she was not a maid. But she was just happy to see Naruto again. Gaara filled in Naruto with all that had happened in the past few years. He told him that his village had been part of a plot to attack Konoha with the aid of Sound Village since their daimyo had been bleeding them dry for years financially by sending missions to Konoha instead of them. His father had allied with Orochimaru in hopes to knock Konoha down a peg and show that their village was not the weakest one. But their plan failed horribly, with Gaara's father being killed by Orochimaru so that the man could impersonate him and try and assassinate Minato in a trap that backfired. They had fought, and the only reason Orochimaru had survived was the use of the Edo Tensei that he used to summon all 3 of the past Hokages to fight the current one. Minato had been able to defeat them in the end, but it had been a bit too much for him and had only survived with the combined might of Kushina as well as Jiraiya using seals to break through the barrier he had set up. Orochimaru had escaped with his subordinates as they went to take Minato to receive the medical aid he needed. Gaara had been instrumental to the main plan, but he had been soundly beaten by Menma, who had access to his Biju's full power, as well as the toad summoning contract and chakra chains that he had used to bind Gaara in his unleashed form before he hit Gaara with a non-lethal form of his father's signature jutsu, the Rasengan, to knock him out of the fight. In the aftermath, the truth of Suna's betrayal had been made known to Konoha, but even with that knowledge being stated, nothing had changed. Their village was still suffering financially, and Gaara, who had been elected as the Kazekage, was struggling to find the means to fix it. So that is where we are right now, said Gaara as he sipped the water that Temari had brought for them while he had explained the story. Temari had taken a seat away from Naruto since being too close to him caused her to blush from the close proximity. Well, that sucks, said Naruto as he heard about the struggles his friend was forced to go through in the past several years. Yes, it is, said Gaara with a sigh, but there is one slim hope out of all this. I am all ears, my friend, said Naruto as he listened closely. Gaara pulled out a scroll that had been sent to him, as well as the other major and minor villages that were unfriendly, or at least not full on hostile terms with Konoha like Iwa was since the last Shinobi War. The scroll was an invitation to a major tournament with a literal fortune for a cash prize. Apparently the sheer amount of missions that had been sent to Konoha because of their ability to drive back two attacking villages caused a surplus in their funds. This was a means to gloat about such things while showing off that they were more powerful as they did it. The scroll stated that the villages could send up to 2 contestants for it, and that the tournament was going to take place in the next 2 weeks. I am planning to send 2 of my own, said Gaara, but I can't think of anyone to send to fight. Sure, there are plenty who could, but I know Minato will use his own son for this tournament, and that puts us at a major disadvantage already. I am in a bind here, since if I send someone they have to face the near impossible chances of winning, which makes it seem as though it would be the smarter decision to just not participate. Well, you could always send me to fight for you, said Naruto as though it was the simplest answer to his dilemma. His response made Gaara spit his water out. Are you joking? Asked Gaara with a serious look on his face. Did you listen to me when I said that Menma, the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and son of Minato Namikaze, would be fighting in this tournament? Oh, I heard you, said Naruto with a grin, and I relish the challenge, so how about it, Gaara? I can't in good faith send you to do such a thing, while you are physically strong. This I know, you have no chance to beat him. I tried with my most powerful form and still lost. He wasn't even using his and he still won against me. And so what? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Is that supposed to deter me in any way? I said I would fight, so why not send me since you can't decide on anyone else? What do you have to lose? You are sending someone, who is not of your village, to fight what you already deemed impossible. So what is the downside here? Either you were right and I lose as you expected, or I shatter your preconceived thoughts of my assured failure and win you a shitload of money. Look me in the eye and tell me with 100% certainty that you wish to enter this tournament, said Gaara as he looked at Naruto with all seriousness. I want to participate in this tournament, said Naruto as he looked Gaara directly in the eyes as he said it. So are you going to let me help you or not? Gaara looked him back in the eye for about a minute, seeing that Naruto was deadly serious in his conviction. He then began to laugh since the whole thing was humorous to him. He couldn't remember the last time he had ever laughed, nor could Temari for that matter, but he just couldn't help himself. Before I agree to this, said Gaara as he calmed himself enough to speak clearly, just answer me one question. Why? Why? Said Naruto as he thought about it. He used his fingers to count out all the reasons. Well, there is the fact that I am an unknown samurai in a world of shinobi, so this is the perfect way to show that samurai are not inferior as many shinobi say. The fact that if I win, my name will be known, and if there is one thing I have learned is that being well known helps in many situations. Sure, there are those who try to kill you, but what is life without the danger? Plus, the last thing I will say is that I want the chance to fight Menma, and before you ask as to why I wish to do that, I have a score to settle with the man and I aim to settle it one way or another, so how about it? Gaara took in all that he said, and in all reality what was the risk? He was honestly 2 seconds away from declining the invitation in the first place, but lo and behold, the gods had answered his prayers and sent someone crazy enough to fight the son of Minato in the name of their village. Even if he didn't win, the fight should prove entertaining since it wasn't every day one saw a full-trained samurai fight against a shinobi in a grand spectacle like a tournament. So with a smirk of his own plastered onto his face, Gaara stood up alongside Naruto and shook his hand in agreement. Naruto walked with his friend Gaara and his sister towards the village of Konoha. Kankuro had been placed in charge of the village of Suna while Gaara was gone since he was very good at running the place when Gaara was unavailable like right now. They weren't alone since there were about a dozen Anbu that had come along as a protective detail since Gaara was the Kazekage after all. Attempts on his life could still happen even though it was well known he was a Jinchuriki. As they walked, not much was said since many of the things that they would have talked about had already been said in the few days that they had been in the village before they all set out like this. Naruto had been happy to find a blacksmith who made him a custom-made lighter like he wanted with the same black bull symbol on it to use when he wanted. It cost him a bit to get it custom-made like it was, but that was the point since the materials it was made of were far stronger than the cheap plastic ones you find just about anywhere. The trip to Konoha had been mainly uneventful since there were no attacks on their group as they made their way there. The only thing of note was that Temari had kept trying to express her feelings for Naruto, but would just get all red in the face and sort of drift away. Naruto was oblivious to all this and thought that she was just having some sort of hot flash or something since she was in a forest when she was so used to being in the desert where her home was located. Gaara mentally called his friend an idiot since he knew about his sister's attraction to the man, along with pretty much everyone else in their party since it was so damned obvious. Yet to see Naruto so dense only made this stranger. He thought to himself that maybe he should say something, but he decided against it since it was not his problem, and the others who saw this came to the same conclusion to the matter and left it alone. To them it was actually funny to see the normally strong-willed sister of their cage fluster and get nervous around a guy since it was the polar opposite of what she was usually like around people. Yet all good ties came to an end as they came into view of the village of Konoha. Naruto stopped as he saw the gate, the memories of his past flooding his mind as he saw them. Pure rage flashed through him for a brief second before it simply disappeared as quickly as it had come. Naruto was surprised that his anger left him so quickly, but he was not going to complain since the village was not worth all that anger. Sure, they saw him as an abomination since he was not like the rest of them with their chakra, but it was due to their actions towards him that he became what he was today, and he had to admit that he liked what he had become better than if he had become what he was expected to be if he had remained as a shinobi. So with a deep breath followed up by a slight smirk on his face, he walked into the very village that he left so long ago without so much as a glance back to. He met up with his group once more, who had continued to walk as he stood in place. They didn't question as to why he did, but to be honest they didn't want to know since a man was meant to have his own troubles in life that others should not pry into. Gaara told Naruto and Temari to go and do what they wished since it was about noon at the moment. He had to go and announce his arrival to the Hokage as well as sign up Naruto for the tournament so he could participate in it. Naruto simply waved at the two of them before he set out to get something to eat. All the while Temari looked back between him and Gaara deciding who to follow after. In the end she chose to follow Naruto. "So you decided to follow me," said Naruto as he sensed her running after him to catch up, "and here I thought that you couldn't stand me with the way you kept walking away from me on the trip here." Was all Temari was able to say since she was embarrassed about this whole thing. She mentally cried over the fact that she just could not admit her feelings to Naruto since every time she opened her mouth near him she could only say simple phrases or single words since she became tongue-tied around him. It pissed her off that he was so dense to not see this as a sign of her feelings, but that anger was always crushed nearly instantly after it poked its head out. Why did she have to be in love with such an idiot for a man like this one? "So do you want to join me for lunch?" asked Naruto as he pointed at the noodle stand he had always wanted to go to in his youth but had never did so since the owners were just like the others in this village and hated him. Since so far no one had recognized him upon entering the village meant that they probably wouldn't either, so now was a good time as any to get some noodles. He wondered how no one recognized him, but then again he was a scrawny-ass weakling of a kid when he had left, and now he was a muscular young man, the complete opposite of what he once was in the past, so it wasn't so surprising now that he thought about it like this. "What?" said Temari with a squeak as she basically shouted that in surprise that he asked that. In her mind, it was racing with the possibilities of this being a date, one where she would finally be able to admit her feelings to him, but for reasons that baffled her as well as caused far more embarrassment, she responded with something else. "Fine, but this isn't a date." "Okay," said Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Where the hell had that come from? I never said it was. This was just me treating a friend to lunch since I have a bit to spend from a past job. I am a firm believer in karma and believe that good things come to those who help others." "Oh," said Temari as she mentally beat the shit out of herself for saying that last bit. Why did she say that to him? Why couldn't she just admit her feelings already? And why, dear Cammy, why could this idiot of a man she was in love with not see this with her body language being such an obvious sign? So with that bit of awkwardness out of the way, the two of them made their way to the stand and took a seat. As expected from Naruto, neither the owner nor his daughter recognized him as he was, which suited him just fine. But he did notice the flirting that Ayame did towards him for a bit before she just stopped abruptly. What he was not aware of was that Ayame had been scared off by the killer glare that Tamari had sent her to tell her to back the fuck off of her man. The glare promised pain like no other if she continued to flirt with him. And Ayame listened since she was not a shinobi and knew not to fight against one since it would be suicide to try. Naruto had not seen all this transpire since he was lost in his own thoughts, but he was happy that Ayame was no longer flirting with him. She had thrown boiling oil at him when he was 6 and threatened to throw knives at his if he ever returned the last time he was here, so why the hell would he give a woman who hated his guts the time of day? They were served their food without any further issue, with Naruto leaving the money for it on the counter before they left. He didn't leave a tip though since he didn't really want to tip assholes like them, and it wasn't like he was coming back to this place since Konoha wasn't really a destination he would keep coming back to in the future if he could help it. He had no business here other than to fight in this tournament to help his friend, nothing more nothing less. As he and Tamari walked away from the stand, Naruto got run into by a kunoichi who had been sprinting for some reason. He was built like a solid wall, so he was still on his feet, yet the kunoichi was not so lucky and fell onto her rear. "What the hell?" said the woman as she shook her head for a moment to clear her head. She looked up to see just who the hell she had run into like this, and the moment she saw, she sighed in annoyance. "Dear Kami. Why do you do this to me?" "Oh," said Naruto with a chuckle as he saw that it was Shizuka who had run into him like this. "Wow. Didn't expect to see you again, Shizuka. Thought you were brought back to your village." "Yes I was," said Shizuka with a growl, "no thanks to you." "Sounds more like a you problem," said Naruto with a smirk as he held out his hand towards her. "So will you accept my help to get you back to your feet, or are you still too much a bitch to accept help?" "Why you?" Shizuka growled in rage at being called a bitch by this asshole yet again. "So I am gonna go with a definite yes on the still being a bitch part," said Naruto as he chuckled to himself, but to his surprise she grabbed his hand and pulled herself up using it, yet before he could say anything else, she slapped him hard across the face. To be honest, he didn't feel it, and the fact that she was holding her hand in pain meant she hurt herself more with her actions than she did to him. "Ow!" she shouted as she held her hand in pain. "What the hell were you fed?" "Meat," said Naruto with a shrug, "and lots of it to bulk up." "You fucking asshole," Shizuka said, more to herself than to him. "And just how am I the asshole here?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. "Since you ran into me by accident, I offered to help you up, and then you slapped me with enough force to hurt yourself. Where in that sentence that I just said am I the asshole?" "You just growled Shizuka. It was then that she noticed the glaring blonde woman behind Naruto who was leaking so much killing intent. This made her question just how the hell Naruto was not aware of this, and wondered if this woman was his girlfriend or something, but from how dense the man was from the few times she met him, she highly doubted it. "Shizuka," said Takiwa as she appeared by Shizuka, "we need to meet with the Hokage to register you into the tournament." "Oh," said Naruto with a smirk, "so you are going to be part of the tournament as well? Well, that's good to know." "Wait a minute," said Shizuka in confusion, "you are here to enter the tournament?" "Yes," said Naruto as he pulled out a cigarette and lit it up. "I thought I made that clear a second ago." "So you are going to challenge Shinobi who can use chakra, including the son of Minato himself? I have to ask since I am curious, are you insane?" "I might be," said Naruto as he smoked calmly, "but then again aren't we all in a way? You were insane enough to run away from your home and nearly got molested by a guy for doing so what if I am picking a fight with Shinobi?" Shizuka would have said more on the matter, but Takiwa covered her mouth so the young lady couldn't shout out what she wanted to say. "I wish you luck in the tournament, young samurai," said Takiwa before she began to drag Shizuka off to meet the Hokage. "I feel as though you will need it." "Thanks for the luck, lady," said Naruto as he finished his smoke and put out the butt with his foot. Takiwa then left him and Tamari there by themselves. She did look back once before they disappeared from sight though. She had arrived with Shizuka yesterday night, and as Shizuka slept in the hotel room they had for the night, she had set out to do some information gathering. She found Jiraiya in the village and asked him to join her for a drink. They were old acquaintances, so he was willing, mainly due to the fact that he was a pervert and she was a good-looking woman. The man was quite the lightweight when it came to hard alcohol. And once he had a few in him he became loose-lipped to her. She did this to see if Naruto was telling the truth about being the student of Jiraiya as he said he was the last time they met. Jiraiya had gotten angry at the mention of Naruto, and went on a rant about how the boy was nothing more than an abomination that was once the stain upon the Uzumaki as well as the Namikaze name. She listened intently as he explained who Naruto was, being the boy with no chakra in his body, and the fact that he as well as Tsunade tried to teach the brat in an attempt to strengthen him in some way, but that he failed to grow stronger, so they just left him to fend for himself. He then went on to cheer about the brat's demise, since the fact that he was kicked out of his home at the age of 7 as well as the fact he left the village as well meant he was without a doubt dead. Once Takiwa had gotten the information she wanted to gain, she left the man there drunk. He complained about the lack of action he was expecting to get from all this. But Takiwa could not stand to be near a man who proudly proclaimed to abandoning a child. And even more so a child who needed more help like Naruto. She smirked to herself as she left him there though, since this tournament would be far more interesting to her now. The reason she had come here with Shizuka in the first place was their tradition stated that she would have to fight her future husband in battle. She had been told that she would be betrothed to the student of Jiraiya. And while she had felt bad about the fact that she would have been forced to marry Menma since the brat had an ego that was enormous in size, now there was a chance she would be betrothed to another instead. She saw the interactions between the two of them, and while it seemed like Shizuka couldn't stand the man, he at least helped her and wasn't self-centered or narcissistic about it. For all things, he was just an asshole, but nowadays what man wasn't? Naruto and Temari had went on their own way as they departed, and as they walked to who knows where, Naruto couldn't help overhearing multiple citizens of the village talking about the tournament itself. Did you hear that the last Uchiha Sasuke is joining in the tournament along with Menma? Yes, I heard about it. With the two of them fighting, our village will win it all quite easily. Naruto was confused when he heard this, since when he had left at the age of 7, there had been a whole clan's worth of Uchiha, so how was Sasuke the so-called last Uchiha? He turned to Temari, who explained to him why that was. When it came to proper conversation such as this, she was able to do so without any sort of complications. It was just when it was emotional in some way that she would falter. She explained how Itachi, who he remembered as Sasuke's older brother, had killed off his entire clan, leaving Sasuke alive for reasons that they didn't know, since it couldn't be due to the fact that he was family. He had killed his own mother and father without issue, so how was he not able to kill his own little brother like he had them? She didn't know. Nor did anyone else for that matter, but Naruto didn't really care too much. The Uchiha were all assholes with egos that matched Menma's, so they brought their own deaths upon themselves, he assumed. Temari excused herself since she wanted to go somewhere and buy something. Which didn't matter to him since she was her own person and could do as she wanted to do. He began to walk around for a bit to see what there was to do to kill time until tomorrow, when he saw a little girl with red hair being chased by dogs. The girl couldn't be any more than 5 at most, so he thought to help her out, so he quickly got between the girl and the snarling dogs. She held onto the back of his leg with tears in her eyes as he glared at the dogs. The leader of the pack rushed forward to attack him, but he punted the dumb mutt like a football to the point it went flying into the distance. This caused the others in the pack to back away in fear before they ran off. "Are you all right, little girl?" asked Naruto in concern for the well-being of the child. "Yes," said the girl as she wiped the tears from her eyes. "Those mean dogs tried to hurt me." "It's okay," said Naruto as he kneeled down and handed her a handkerchief to wipe her face. "The bad dogs are gone now. Can you take me home now?" she asked him. "Well, I would love to," said Naruto, since he had nothing to do right now and this seemed like a good way to kill a bit of time. "But you can't go home all scared and sad like that. I know how about some ice cream to cheer you up a bit." "Yay!" shouted the girl in joy as she loved ice cream. She took the man by the hand and tried, and I emphasize the word tried, to pull him along. It didn't work though, since he was massive in comparison to him, but he decided to play along and let her believe that she was dragging him along. She led him to her favorite ice cream stand and pointed to the picture that she wanted. Naruto smirked as he ordered it for her and paid the man for the frozen treat. "Well, do you feel better now?" asked Naruto as he saw he licking her ice cream with much gusto. "Yes," she said before she hugged his leg in gratitude. "Thank you, mister." "It was my pleasure," said Naruto as he ruffled her hair a bit. "Now before I take you home, can you tell me your name at least?" "My name is Naruto," she said with a quick smile before she returned to licking her ice cream. "Huh," said Naruto with a genuine chuckle. "That's funny. My name is Naruto, so let's get you back home. Your parents are probably worried about you right now." "No," she said sadly, "they are always too busy. My brother is supposed to watch over me, but he keeps leaving me alone." "Well," said Naruto, whoever this older brother of hers was seemed like a real jerk to leave his little sister like this to be chased by dogs of all things. "I hope that things get better in time." "Okay," Naruto said. "Naruto," shouted a voice in the distance, "where the hell are you?" This only further solidifies my image of the brother being a jerk if it took him this long to look for her. Just who the hell is this guy? He got the answer to his question not long afterwards, and dear Kami Naruto knew that there was someone up high fucking with him in all this. There was just no other explanation for this kind of thing happening to him like this. The man to stand before him was none other than Menma Uzumaki Namikaze. "There you are, Naruto," said Menma angrily. He had been told by his mother to watch after his little sister as she played in the park. But then his girlfriend Hinata showed up and he left Naruto alone to spend some time with her instead. He had lost track of time, and when he got back to the park she was not there. He got angry that she had left the park in the first place, and now he was even more so that he had to spend time to search for her. To him, his little sister was nothing more than a nuisance since the moment she was born, since she latched onto him and his parents kept telling him to be nice to her. "I told you to wait at the park." "Scary dogs chased me," said Naruto in fear. She was scared of her brother when he was angry like this, but this man saved me and bought me ice cream. "Well, thanks whoever you are." It was at this point that he looked at Naruto fully, and within moments of looking at him he recognized him. "Naruto, come over here now." "But Menem," whined Naruto. "I said now," shouted Menma in rage that his brat of a little sister was not obeying him. He grabbed her by the arm and pulled her away from Naruto with enough force to the point that she dropped her ice cream. "Well, that's no way to treat your family," said Naruto plainly, "but then again you threw me out of the house when I was 7, so it's not much a surprise." "How are you still alive?" demanded Menma. The fact that Naruto was here shocked him. Everyone had expected him to die after he left the village when he was disowned, but to see him here of all places, and far stronger looking than ever, was shocking to him. "I just didn't die," said Naruto with a shrug, "since I wanted to live, no big secret." "And you thought to come back here of all places?" asked Menma in rage. Just looking at his former brother pissed him off something fierce, since the fact that he shared the same genetics with this abomination of a man only infuriated him to no end. "Like this, back to the place where you are not wanted?" "I have my reasons to be here," said Naruto as he began to walk off. Naruto was with her family now, so he didn't need to take her home like he thought, and even though Menma was apparently a horrible older brother, if his actions were any indication of the matter, he couldn't really do anything here since they were the children of the Hokage, and he was not trying to start anything out of the blue. "And luckily for me I don't have to explain myself to you." "Hey," seethed Menma as he saw someone who he deemed as lower than him just brush him off like that. "Don't you ignore me, freak." Yet when he saw that Naruto was not listening to him and continued walk away, he made to attack him with a punch to the back of the head. Naruto felt his ki and held up his own hand to grab a hold of Menma's fist with it, while every fiber of his being was telling him to crush it. He was going to be the bigger man here and simply threw it away from him. "How so shinobi-like of you," said Naruto with a grunt. "You wait for me to turn my back before you strike. At least when I attack, you see it coming. Like a weak freak such as you can hurt anyone. Funny you say that when I just blocked your blow and shifted it away from me," said Naruto as he tried to walk away from Menma once more. Yet once again he felt Menma's ki warning him of an attack. But this time it was multiple strikes. He blocked all of them easily, which only fueled Menma's rage as he did so, as he blocked all Menma's attacks. Naruto grew worried that the man who saved her from the dogs and cheered her up with ice cream would get hurt and tried to get between the two of them. But that was a bad idea since Menma ended up punching her in the face in his fury-fueled attack. This did not register to him as he continued to try and attack Naruto. But Naruto heard her crying from being punched in the face hard enough to cause a nosebleed. He grabbed a hold of Menma's fist and began to squeeze it as he glared at the man who hit his own sister like this. "Are you just that heartless?" asked Naruto in rage. "You hit your own sister and don't even stop to aid her. What type of brother are you? I may be considered a freak, but at least I never hurt my family." It was then that he decked Menma square in the face with a punch. The force of it launched Menma to the point he hit a wall, which Naruto used this time to use the handkerchief to wipe the blood off Naruto's face. "Are you okay?" "Yes," said Naruto as she continued to cry. "Run home and tell your mother what he did to you," said Naruto. She nodded in agreement and ran off to head home to do just that. "Some family. Do you have any idea as to who you hit?" said Menma in rage as he got back to his feet. "Do you understand just what I can legally do to you now?" "How can I not?" said Naruto with a huff. "We were born from the same parents. Just because you all forgot me doesn't change the past. But the better question is, do you know what I can do to you if you hurt your sister again like that? Because spoiler alert, you won't have a hand to repeat the process by the time I am done." "Is that a threat?" demanded Menma as he grits his teeth in rage. "No," said Naruto as he looked the man in the eyes. What Menma saw was cold murderous intent as their gazes met. "Since just about anyone can make threats, I make promises, and if there is one thing you must know about me is that I keep my promises. Now if you'll excuse me, I have better shit to do than stand here and argue with a man who beats up his little sister." "Get back here, freak," shouted Menma, but before he could attack yet again for the third time, he heard a voice shout out that sent a shiver up his spine. "Menma Uzumaki Namikaze. shouted his mother Kushina in a voice that was heard by everyone in the village since it's so loud as well as pissed. Menma lost all the color in his face since he knew he was in so much trouble right now. She only ever used his full name when he was in serious trouble. He growled, since he might be in trouble now, but he would get Naruto back for this one way or another. This he swore. The next day, Naruto arrived at the arena to participate in the tournament like the others were. He saw that, like the citizens had said, both Menma and Sasuke were there to participate as well as Shizuka. There were several other people who came from Taki as well as the grass village. But the numbers were low enough so that there would only be 3 rounds to it. Apparently no one wanted to mess with the son of the infamous Minato, but it mattered not to Naruto since a tournament was a tournament no matter how many people were a part of it. People all filed into the stadium to get a good seat and watch the matches. Minato and his wife were in the main booth with their young daughter sitting on Kushina's lap to watch. Gaara and Temari were in the booth as well to the side of Kushina in the seats reserved for guest cages. Minato looked at the participants of this tournament. He had been shocked to hear Naruto was the one to participate for Suna. He had thought like everyone else that Naruto had died long ago, but to see him here surprised him. But if the abomination wanted to make a fool out of himself in front of everyone like this, then who was he to stop it? If anything, he honestly could use the laugh since he had to watch as Kushina laid into Menma over the fact he not only left Naruto alone in the park, but he had punched her as well. So after several hours of hearing her yelling at him, he could use the laugh. So he welcomed everyone here to watch the tournament and announced the 2 first combatants. The people were now all surprised to see Naruto since not a single one of them recognized him as he was right now. But then again, he had been so weak the last time they saw him and didn't think that he would survive on his own when he had left the village, so once the surprise of his survival wore off, they all began to laugh in unison over the fact that he was even in the tournament to begin with. He heard as people were taking bets on how long he would last, ranging from seconds to about a minute at most. While this ticked him off a bit, he didn't let it get to him. His first opponent was none other than Shizuka herself, and boy was she pissed that she had to fight the man who she saw as nothing more than an asshole. "You still have the right to forfeit the match," she shouted towards him, but to her annoyance, he simply grinned at her. "The same could be said to you," said Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders, "but we both know that is not happening, so stop worrying about things and show me just what you are made of. Prove to me that you are more than just a bitch who refuses help." His words had their intended effect since Shizuka hated to be called a bitch like that. She glared at him as she unsheathed her blade and used a jutsu to make multiple afterimages of herself to distract him from the real her. He never stopped looking forward as she as well as her images circled around him. Hell, he never went for his own blade as he did, and this only ticked her off more that he didn't see her as a challenge. So when she was sure that he was unaware of the real version of her, she went in for the winning strike. Everyone watching, at least those who lived in this village, thought that this was the end of the match, but the looks on their faces changed when they saw as she slashed the afterimage of Naruto himself. Shizuka was surprised that this happened since she had not seen him move from his spot. But she wasn't able to do anything else since she was slammed to the ground on her stomach as Naruto fell on top of her. He sat on her back in a cross-legged position and pressed his still-sheathed blade to her head. She felt as her chakra began to drain from her body, and it was then that she understood how dangerous of a blade this man had in his possession if it was able to drain an opponent of their chakra like this. Naruto remained there until she was nearly dry of it before he used the tip of the sheath to slam into the back of her head hard enough to knock her out without causing any sort of permanent brain damage. He got up off of her and slung her unconscious body over his shoulder and brought her to the medic nin that were there to treat the combatants if needed. They looked at him with wide eyes as he basically passed her off to them and then walked back to where the others were waiting. They looked at him in surprise, but then Sasuke was called out to fight the one shinobi who came from the grass village. Naruto didn't pay attention to the fight as he sat there and smoked in peace. He wondered if the rest of the fights would be this easy, yet he doubted it. Shizuka had lost to him since she had assumed he had no means to keep track of her, which he easily could since only the real version of a person gave off ki, or in the case of clone jutsu, more ki than the copies of said person. No one took him seriously, but now they would have to since he showed he was not easily beaten. He heard as the crowd cheered when Sasuke won, but he still did not care about it. Nor did that change as he heard Menma's name getting called to fight the shinobi from Taki. To no one's surprise, Menma won his match easily and so the semifinals began. Naruto heard as his name was called and walked out onto the field as he enjoyed the last of his cigarette, and he put it out with his foot as he looked up and saw as it was Sasuke himself that he was fighting in this round. The people were cheering him on, which Sasuke was eating up with a show of his hands demanding more praise. "What an ass. Are you quite done making an ass of yourself?" asked Naruto, who just wanted this match to start without all the showboating. because I don't really have all day for this. Are you in such a hurry to lose to an Uchiha elite such as me? Asked Sasuke in a haughty voice full of arrogance. Naruto had remembered that Sasuke had been this way when they were young, and apparently it had only gotten worse over the years. Uchiha elite? Asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. That's not much of a title considering you were basically the last one. It's like getting a first-place medal for being the only person to participate in an event. You shut your mouth, freak, said Sasuke in anger that his claims of being an elite were being mocked. Or else what, crybaby, said Naruto with a chuckle, you gonna go all emo on me? You think you are so strong and bad because you lost your family like you did, yet I know of many a man and woman who have suffered the same fate who are not only stronger than you, but far less arrogant about it. I am gonna make you regret those words, said Sasuke as he activated his Sharingan that he had unlocked during the mission to wave with his squad. And how do you suppose that? Asked Naruto as he laughed hard at this weak runt of his family talk such big game when he didn't have the power to back up his words. Just gonna stand there and run your mouth, or are you gonna man the fuck up and attack me? At this point Sasuke charged forward with a kunai in hand as Naruto expected him to. He remembered in the past that Sasuke would grow pissed if people ever mocked his strength or his family. And he had just done both really, so Naruto used that anger to his advantage and easily dodged the kunai slice towards his throat and kneed the arrogant piece of shit in the chest hard, and when I say hard, I mean cracking of the ribs hard. Sasuke coughed out blood before Naruto grabbed a hold of his face and full-on slammed it into the ground with enough force to crack it. He then stood straight up and began to roll his arms a bit since they had gotten stiff from him doing that for some reason. This was too much for the crowd since Naruto beating Sasuke should never have happened like this. They all began to boo at him for a few minutes before they were finally silenced by Minato himself, who called out the next two combatants to the field. Menma glared at Naruto as he walked by, and then proceeded to beat his next opponent into a bloody mess the second the match began. Naruto felt sorry for the shinobi who had been on the receiving end of Menma's rage, but he would avenge the fallen challenger personally. But like he was waiting for, his name was finally called to fight in the finals. Well, would you look at this, said Naruto as he walked over to his starting position. Would you have ever guessed that we would be in the final round like this? Never had I thought this would be possible, said Menma through gritted teeth since he was so pissed off at the moment. But then again, you were supposed to be dead already, so I never thought about you at all. Well, good to know I can change your mind like this, said Naruto with a chuckle as he pulled out his lighter. He was going to light up a smoke, but he saw that he had only one left in the pack and thought of smoking it in victory instead of provoking his opponent. He learned that people got really pissed if you lit up a smoke when fighting them due to it seeming like you were not taking them seriously. Menma he knew was strong, but then again he was trained by two of the most infamous shinobi around, so it was expected. Plus add on the Kyuubi and you have yourself a real challenge ahead of you. Well, when I am done with you, said Menma as he cracked his knuckles, you won't be so much as a thought in anyone's mind. Have you looked in the mirror lately, said Naruto with a raised eyebrow, because I am twice your muscle mass. This is not going to go the way that you think it will. I can see this going one of two ways really. Oh yeah, freak, said Menma, who himself was laughing at this point, and how do you see this ending between us? Either you beat me, said Naruto as he held up a single digit, but the cost will be too much for you in the end, so it will feel like a hollow victory, but the second way I see is you beaten, laid out at my feet. Oh, is that so? Said Menma as his hands clenched into fists. Well, allow me to show you a third way this fight will end, with your body being sent to our morgue before we throw it out into nature to allow the animals to deal with it like they should have years ago. Well, this should be interesting to witness, said Naruto with a smirk as he pulled out his blade with the sheath still on. A fight between two prodigies trained by the most infamous of their professions. What the hell are you talking about? You were trained to be a shinobi by Minato and Kushina, two of the best, said Naruto. He knew they were the best and so he wouldn't lie and say otherwise, but I was trained to become a samurai by none other than Mifune himself. Imagine that. The most infamous of samurai took the time to train this so-called abomination, so let's see whose training was better. Minato was surprised to hear that Naruto had been trained by Mifune personally. Last time he checked, the elderly samurai didn't teach anyone and vowed never to do so since no one could meet his expectations. To hear that Naruto met them was perplexing since the brat couldn't even make it as a shinobi, so how could he make it as a samurai? The two former brothers heard the start of the match. And in true Namikaze fashion, Menma rushed forward faster than people could see with their eyes. Yet when he went to punch Naruto, he noticed that he was smirking. Not surprised in the slightest about this happening, Menma felt as Naruto grabbed a hold of his hand and used the momentum behind the punch to throw him towards the wall. Menma landed on the wall with his feet, and used them to push off to go for a kick this time. Naruto dodged this one as well, and then quickly ducked as a shadow clone popped up and tried to stab him. He expertly aimed for the throat with his blade so cause enough damage so that it dispersed. Menma decided to use range to his advantage since while Naruto might have physical strength, he lacked range since he did not have access to chakra like most other people, so he quickly formed the hand signs to launch a powerful fireball at him. Naruto simply sliced the thing down the center using one hand to swing his sword down. "What's this?" said Naruto with a smirk. "Is the prodigal son of one Minato Namikaze afraid to get in close to fight his opponent?" "Shut up!" shouted Menma as he summoned up several dozen shadow clones to surround Naruto with. They all threw kunai in sync with each other so that there was no possible way that Naruto could dodge them, but he did something differently. He charged forward and deflected most of the ones coming from this direction. The ones he did not pierced his skin, but not too deeply nor were they anywhere near anything vital. One of the lessons he had learned was that it was impossible to always block everything. So in times like this you had to minimize the damage done to yourself. Once in range of attack he swiped his sheathed blade upwards, but as he expected Menma leaned back to dodge it. Naruto smirked as Menma did what he wanted and full-on Spartan kicked him in the chest with enough force to slam him into the wall. Menma coughed hard as the wind was knocked out of his system and then fell to the floor onto his hands and knees once the initial force of the blow wore off. "Still think there is a third way this will end?" asked Naruto as he stood there with his sword slung over his shoulder. Menma at this point had had enough of this bullshit. None of this was adding up in his mind since Naruto had been so weak without the proper means to get stronger since he lacked chakra, so how the hell did he get so strong? He would not stand for it, and so he decided to play his trump card here and now to end this farce of a match and fully eradicate in hope of recovering from the beating he was about to dish out to Naruto. He screamed out in rage as he felt the energy of the Kyuubi envelop him like a cloak of sorts to empower his body. He then put his hands together to form the Rasengan, the infamous jutsu that their father had made in the Third Shinobi War to use against Iwa along with his Harishin. The damage done to their forces forced the village to surrender to theirs and end the war, and in Menma's rage-fueled mind it was the perfect means to destroy this smirch upon his clan's legacy here and now. "So you were taking this seriously then," said Naruto with a serious tone. "Funny to see you have to do so with the one you called an abomination like the rest of this village did. I am going to put you so far down that it will be impossible to ever rise up again," shouted Menma, who at this point let his rage control him. The fact that he was using the Cubus power only made it worse. Naruto saw as the size of the Rasengan in his hand grew in size, and he smirked since he saw that Menma was really trying to hurt him in a manner that would cripple him beyond the realm of healing from it. He always knew that this day would come, when the two of them would throw down like this, and to be honest he wouldn't have it any other way. "Then allow me to take this a bit more seriously as well," said Naruto. He spun his still-sheathed katana. His grimoire began to glow with a dark purple power as he called forth its power to aid him in this fight. The dark magic that laid within it seeped out and infused itself into his blade in a fashion that seemed akin to a flaming sword. This show of power utterly stumped those who saw this. It was already crazy enough to see the boy they saw as an abomination beat not only his first shinobi opponent, causing many to lose their bets in the process, Sasuke Uchiha the prodigal clan member, but this was too much for their minds to see. How had this freak acquired power that they felt was akin to the Cubus' own from what they could sense? None were surprised more than Kushina Uzumaki as well as Minato. Naruto was cheering for the man who not only saved her from mean dogs, but had bought her ice cream to cheer her up and punched her mean older brother. She never knew about Naruto in the past so the hate for him was not there. Menma only grew far more enraged to see this freak dare to stand toe-to-toe with him. He was the prodigal son of Minato Namikaze. He would become the greatest shinobi this world had ever seen as the prophesy had foretold, and he would be damned if this abomination to the very nature of the universe would stand in his way. The Kyuubi inside him screamed at him to eliminate this power once and for all since it was one that could rival his own, and the strongest of Biju refused to have something like that in the world to challenge him. "I may not be a shinobi like you Menma," said Naruto as he held his blade above his head and used his other hand to grab a hold of it as well, "but I found my own way in the world, one of my own choosing, and I will not let people like you tell me how I should live it." "Die you freak," shouted Menma as he charged forward with the Rasengan at the ready to end Naruto here and now. His body was still covered in the chakra of the Biju sealed within him, and he knew that nothing Naruto could throw at him would pierce through it. Naruto waited as many a master samurai had before him until the perfect moment to strike. Once it presented itself with Menma being about a yard from him, he swung his blade down. People watched in shock since it seemed like time had stood still as he did so. Dark magic. Dark cloaked dimension slash. said Naruto simply as he spun his blade to rid it of the dark magical energy before he placed it back into the straps on his back. Be happy that I held back quite a bit. If I had unsheathed my blade, you wouldn't have lived through this. Menma's eyes rolled to the back of his head in pain as the energy that was meant to protect him was cut down the middle from the blow. Yet the damage did not stop there, since he felt as a straight line of his bones and organs were damaged from the strike as well. He fell to the ground unconscious from the blow, his Rasengan dispelling due to that fact as he did so. The powerful slash hadn't stopped with just Menma though. Since the power behind the slash had gone through him and literally cut ground leading to the wall of the stadium itself right between where Minato and his wife were sitting in the booth to the point it shifted apart like in an earthquake. It had even gone on to do the same to several buildings outside of the stadium as well. Minato and Kushina had jumped in fright as they felt the stadium shift like it did from the slash, and Gaara as well as Temari were utterly dumbfounded that Naruto had such power in his possession. They had never been told or shown this. And now Gaara could understand why the Biju within him had told him to befriend Naruto, since he could only begin to wonder how much pain Menma was in after taking a blow like that. Like I said Naruto as pulled out the last cigarette in the pack and lit it up with his lighter. Beaten and unconscious at my feet, he then began to laugh out loud to the point that everyone could hear him. Thanks for watching.